right, I'd like to call the July meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. Paula, would you please call the roll?
Alan Brown. Jeffrey Parks.
Present.
Suzanne Broadbent. Present. Heather Clemmer.
Present.
Neela Crank-Clements.
Present.
Greg Eddington. George Massey.
Present.
Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
And Ann Zacharitz. You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Just to go over our meeting process today, I am your acting chairman, and so I will announce each case and ask interested parties to indicate their presence by raising your hand. The commissioners will discuss the details of the case, calling on the staff for details. Following this discussion, commissioners may choose to ask questions of parties present. Interested persons may speak to support or protest the application. The applicant will be entitled to one brief rebuttal. Interaction between applicant and protestants on the floor is not permitted. Persons speaking are asked to approach the center podium one at a time, introduce themselves by speaking your name and address, and present their position as succinctly as possible. We have a very full agenda today. I would ask you to be respectful of everyone's time and help us to get through our long agenda in a timely fashion, but still bring out the relevant items of your case. The commission asks each speaker to limit his or her remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Following the public hearing on the application, the commission will take one of the following actions. 1, approve the certificate of appropriateness. 2, continue the proposal. 3, deny the proposal with prejudice, which means that the application may not be resubmitted for at least 1 year unless the commission determines that circumstances have changed. And the 4th option, deny the proposal without prejudice, which means the applicant may reapply at any time. When an application has been approved and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the certificate of appropriateness to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA has been issued, and please contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. Any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a certificate of appropriateness may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the BOA. For more information about the BOA, call the phone number listed on the back of your agenda. I would also ask all of the people in the room, audience and commissioners, to silence your cell phones, and we will get going with the meeting. Thank you. Anything from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer this month? Very good, thank you. I should announce that we are without our official Historic Preservation Officer this month because she has just had her baby, so we're excited for Katie. Meeting minutes from our May 30th, 2017 meeting.
Mr. Chair, there's just one thing I think needs correction.
Yes.
Item 3, under acceptance of minutes of the previous meeting, that motion was made by Clemmer, but it was seconded by Broadbent. Brown wasn't here.
Brown was not here at that time, was he? That would have been difficult. Okay. Any other comments or corrections on the agenda? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion as amended.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
The motion for approval as amended from Frank Clemens, second from Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Code enforcement reports. Anyone from code enforcement present today?
I do not believe so. If you have any questions or comments regarding the report, please let me know, and I'll forward those to him for you.
Great. Thank you. Continuance announcements and requests. There were none when the agenda was published. I believe we have one that has come in since that time.
Yes, sir. 17-00092. The applicant has requested that be continued until the August 2nd meeting. And that is number 11 of the individual consideration items.
I would be happy to entertain a motion to continue that item to the August 2nd meeting.
I'm happy to give you one. I'd like to continue HPCA 17-00092 to the August 2nd meeting.
Second.
I have a motion from Heather Clemmer to continue, a second from Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right. That item is continued. Public hearings, dilapidated structures.
We have one dilapidated structure, that's C17-30463. The property's at 412 Northwest 26th Street. The proposal is for declaring this structure, a garage structure, on the far east side of the property dilapidated. The commission will review for properties that contribute to the historic integrity of the district and the effect of the proposed demolition on the structure and the historic integrity of both the property and the district.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I just have a clarification, a question to clarify. So historic integrity refers only to design and materials, but not to condition?
That's correct.
Okay. That seems so funny since it's falling down. It has
Right.
no integrity,
Right.
but I understand that. Thank you.
What kind of integrity, I guess, is what
Yeah.
the point is here, yeah.
Could you repeat that question, please? I didn't hear what you asked.
In the staff report, they refer to historic integrity, and I took that to mean that it takes into account only materials and design, but not condition. So the staff report is saying that it's staff's contention that it does have historic integrity, which is funny to me because it's falling over.
I agree.
So to me, it has no integrity, but then I understand that has nothing to do with the condition of the structure.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission or comments from audience?
I would make a motion for C 17-30463 to forward the recommendations made by staff that the garage retains its historic integrity and contributes to the historic integrity of the district, and that demolition of the structure will have an adverse effect on the historic character of the district.
Second.
All right, I have a second. I have a motion from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Heather Clemmer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Did you have any additional, I'm sorry, I may have cut off your, if you had additional comment that you wanted to make on that before calling for a vote. But- Okay, all right. Very good.
Thank you.
All right, consent docket. We have one item on the consent docket today. Is there any particular discussion that would like to happen on the consent docket or a motion for approval of the docket?
Anybody in the audience?
Is there anyone in the audience here to speak on 17-00068, 613 Northwest 16th Street in Mesta Park? Okay, great.
Hi. I'm not sure what I
Just
do.
please state your name
Okay.
and your address.
Teresa Nicoletto, 613 Northwest 16th Street.
Great, thanks. Glad you're here today.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of the applicant? Okay. Anything you wish to address to the commission, or feel we're good to go?
No.
Very good, okay.
Move to approve the consent docket.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Neela Crank Clements and a second from Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The consent docket, the one item on the consent docket today is approved. Thank you.
You're free to go.
Yes, you're free to hang around if you want, but you're free to go if you'd like to, so, yes. All right, cases for individual consideration.
We have HPCA-17-00037 for the property at 417 Northwest 34th Street. This is Nathan Choate. The property has several administratively approved items, including a demolition of the deck in the rear and the construction of a new. This proposal, this item, is for the installation of a shade sail in the backyard.
Staff had recommended a conditional approval of that item. Is the applicant or anyone representing the applicant present today? Questions or comments from commission?
I have a question of Angela. Does the applicant approve the condition?
No,
They've seen the condition?
I have heard nothing from the applicant regarding the staff report.
So then we would maybe need to continue it?
Yeah. And it's really big. Did
Yeah.
anyone else have an issue with kind of the size and height of it?
I mean, personally, I think, it's removable, and it says that the height of the sail does not appear to be visible from the front of the house at the public right-of-way. As long as that happens,
Okay,
it's a very temporary in nature.
possibly, yes.
I mean, it can be there a long time, yes, but
Right.
still.
Probably not with our hail, though.
But
I just wonder how long these last. But yeah, I saw it as something very temporary.
Okay. All right. So since the applicant is not present and has not officially agreed to the conditions set forth, perhaps a continuance is the appropriate.
Yeah. When should we give
I
them 1 month?
I would believe that the applicant could respond by August 2nd,
August what?
putting them on for August 2nd.
August 2nd? Okay, I move to continue HPCA 17-00037 to the August 2nd meeting.
Second.
And is the commission in agreement that the attachment to the house is inappropriate?
I do agree with that, yes.
Yes, I think that would, the conditions that staff has recommended, I
Yes.
think, from my perspective, are appropriate. But
Thank you.
so long as the applicant agrees to that. All right, have a motion from Neela Crank Clements, second from George Massey to continue to August 2nd. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that item is continued.
HPCA-17-00042 for 827 Northwest 17th Street. Ginger Casper is represented by Mark Maxted, neither of which I believe are here today. They have items proposed to remove the front portico here at the southwest corner, close a front door that is located within that little porch, install windows in that area, relocate those columns from that portion of the porch back along the front of the house at portions of the previously existing historic porch, and replacement of 5 windows on the front of the dwelling, one of which appears to be an original opening, the other 4 of which appear to be aluminum windows.
Thank you.
I have questions, but I think they could only be answered if the applicant is here.
And it was indicated in the staff report that we needed quite a bit more detail from them.
Right.
And I think you didn't, I don't see it here, so I think I wouldn't be.
The drawings
Comfortable
that you
voting on
have
it.
are all that we have so far.
Okay.
And they're pretty sketchy in nature. It's hard for us to understand what's going on, and I think it may be hard for them to understand what's going on also in the lack of documentation.
Understood?
Right. I would encourage more drawings, and also, if we're removing anything from the front of the house, to have some documentation in regards to age.
The age of the additions on the front of the house, it may be fairly difficult. We know that several of them went in prior to the Sanborn maps when the house was transferred to flats.
So are you saying that the additions are over 50 years old?
Yes,
Okay.
in excess of 70 years old.
I mean, with that in mind, I would say that they have achieved their own historical significance, possibly,
Possibly.
without original photographs of the house.
Okay.
I think the staff did an excellent job of coming up with 11 specific findings. Given the earlier conversations, probably a 12th has to do with the columns and moving them from one place to the next. And do we have any kind of documentation of what kind of columns were there before?
Okay.
since you know that there was a porch that extended across the entire front.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to continue HPCA 17-00042 to the, Angela, August 2nd? Or
No, ma'am.
the next one?
Yes, please.
September
6th.
6th meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to continue HBCA 17-00042 to the September 6th meeting from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that item is continued. All right, next up. Next item.
HPCA-17-00043, 3817 North McKinley. This project was continued. It is the construction of a new garage in the backyard and replacement and expansion of the existing paving. You do have some notes, I believe, from the neighborhoods regarding this.
Okay, thank you.
Mark 9, Northwest 3817 North McKinley.
Great. Thank you for coming today.
Hey, no problem. Zipping right through these, aren't we?
Yeah.
Angela, I didn't see it in the staff report. You talk about there's an abutting two-story garage, but I didn't see a date. Do you know if that garage is historic?
That garage is historic.
Okay, thank you.
I have some questions. Mark, hi.
Hi, how you doing, Susan?
How are you? Are you aware of the neighborhood
I know the
response?
the response to that?
To your application?
No, I do not.
Well, we have a letter here from the president of the board.
Mm-hmm.
The board had a special meeting to discuss this application.
Cool.
And they're not, the members that were there have indicated that they have some issues with size and a few other things that were raised in the commission meeting last month of the garage. And just wondering, since you haven't had any conversation with them, I'm thinking you might want to.
Well, I don't mind having a meeting with the neighborhood if that's what you're asking.
Well, they have, according to the letter, concerns about the size of the garage, the materials, all those things that were brought up in the last commission meeting. And I still have those concerns myself.
Okay.
And I think there are a lot of things about the garage that really are a problem for the flow of the neighborhood, how our historic properties work together, how it's going to work with the next door property, all those kinds of things. And I do think this one is serious enough that the neighborhood and you need to, your neighbors, the ones who want to talk about it,
Right.
need to talk.
I mean, I don't mind getting their opinion or feedback. I just, like I said, when I propose this, it follows the guidelines of what the historic lays out for me, and I stay within those guidelines to go through this approval process, But, I'm always open to hear opinions and stuff like that, but in the end of the day, they're opinions, and, they're neighbors. I don't know if they have any kind of background in architecture or anything like that like I do. So it's going to be an opinion versus an opinion, But I'm always open to hear their ideas.
Well, it isn't just the neighbors who have those opinions. Several of those opinions and concerns were expressed by the commission members at the last meeting, as you may recall, including me, of course.
Right.
And the problem is, within the technicalities of the guidelines, we can have a garage of a certain amount of square footage, certain percentage of the lot, all those kinds of things. But that is all subject to, I view those as permissive, not entitlements. And it's all within the context of the flow, historic character of the neighborhood. And if we look at guideline 4.4 about garages, it's listed on page 3 of the staff report. The last paragraph is the garages should appear as secondary structures and to not visually overwhelm or compete with other historic buildings of the property or district. And so, to me, that's the overarching thing that's where we start.
Right.
And this garage is, it's very large. It's half as large as the house that sits on the lot where you live. And it is not in keeping with other garages and their designs in the neighborhood, in my opinion. So that's all I have to say for right now. There may be other things.
Are we talking about just materials in this case?
We're talking about size and materials. I am, at least.
Okay. Because I'm open for brick, because we're all for brick. I think in order for brick to happen, there must be a consensus across the board, or else it's basically the lesser material that so it doesn't compete with the house is kind of where it goes
Yeah, I
to.
understand.
Yeah, and like I said, once again, however size, half the size, you say to yourself, is less competing with the house compared to how big the house is. Second, it's visually from the street. You're only going to see a third of the garage, so it's not like you're going to be like, oh, you're going to drive by and like, oh, look at that size of that garage or anything like that. And I've walked the neighborhood. I took lots of photos of the neighborhood, and there are lots of garages that are, similarly in size, but they're just in the back and you just can't see them.
Well, they are similar in size, but some of them, but they're on bigger lots for the most part, well, for all parts as far as I know, and they are in conjunction with much bigger houses. So the scale and the way they flow together is not quite so markedly noticeable. Mm-hmm. So that's the way the houses fall together. And that's my concern. I think it was the concern of the neighbors, too. The garage it's next to is 425 square feet. And this one that's being proposed is like 1,380 or something like that. That's 3 times as big, and that's noticeably
But once
different.
again, still within the guidelines that they set forth.
Within the guidelines of what you may do,
Correct.
not necessarily what is a good idea.
I would have similar comments, particularly in lieu of the, it says we do talk about replacement garages being similar to the original garage if the original garage was there, and the original garage was there and was demolished. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I'm in agreement that just really the drawing that you provide that shows your next door neighbor's garage next to yours, I think that's, I think if the guidelines suggest that you can do a 2-story garage, because we do have some guidelines for that maybe there would be some kind of compromise between the size of the original 1-story garage and the size of this garage. I mean, I'm in agreement. It just looks, it looks overwhelming. And the idea that you can't see it from the street, I mean, I understand that. We use that for some of our guidelines so that, we can perhaps in some cases, and we've discussed this in the meetings lately, so that we could enlarge the garage slightly to accommodate maybe a use that the applicant is asking for and go beyond our 450 square feet. But I think really the telling story and guideline here is the comparison to the next door neighbors. It just looks so overwhelmingly larger than that. And we have done lots of garages lately, and Due to the popularity of the neighborhoods, of course, there's been a lot of dilapidated garages over time, and so for people to invest a lot of money in these homes, of course, everybody, or most people want a garage. We understand that. So we try to be accommodating, but I think that we need to weigh, your house, the size of your house, the size of your neighbor, and other garages in the neighborhood to get to an appropriate, I think size for me in this instance is the larger concern. And you came before, did we give you any suggestions and were any changes made to the plans?
Yeah. Whenever I first did the proposal, it was, since you guys say according to law, it has to be 5% of lot size. The one I submitted before was not, and I mentioned that to you guys. I said it was like 6-point-something%. These plans were reduced by a foot on both sides, on the west side and on the east side, or south side and west side.
Okay. Angela, under specific findings, and I've noticed this several times, I'm just wondering what this means. It says the footprint appears to meet the 5%. Can we not determine yes or no, or is there an issue there that we don't want to commit, or?
I was not prepared to commit because I did not know the actual square footage of the garage at the time I was writing this.
Okay. Have we looked at it again? Do we
No,
know?
ma'am.
Okay.
I'm sure that Mr. Nunn would be able to tell you precisely.
At 680 on the bottom, 680 on top, unless you take off for the staircase. But 680 is what perfectly for the 5%.
I mean, I guess as a final comment, and the commission has spent over the last really 3 or 4 years a great deal of time on garages because of this, because it kind of started out on size, and I think we're really trying to keep the size to appropriate to the house. If you were building the house in the first place, how much would you spend and what size of the garage would be the garage? And my final is I think it's oversized, particularly since it's next door to another garage that's smaller.
I think the thing that struck me is it's not just a garage we're talking about. There's a fully outfitted apartment on the second floor. So I think maybe that's one reason it's larger than perhaps the existing garage next door. I too agree that it seems too large and out of place for this spot.
I would add, as I read the guidelines, actually, there's a real strong argument that this property is not, under the guidelines, appropriate for a 2-story garage anyway, because we do have documentation of the original garage being 1 story, and as I understand the guidelines, if we have that kind of documentation, we do not necessarily consider 2-story garages. Now, I'm not going to argue that really, really strongly if we get a 2-story garage that is reasonable, presented, because I may be wrong. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about that, but that's the way I read it. And, it's just, this whole thing needs to be further looked at. And I think the concerns of the neighbors who have lived there for a long time, and many of them are professionals, one is an architect, and understand the flow of the neighborhood and all, do need to be taken into consideration, and I'm sure you can work out something. And it's better for the neighborhood, I think.
Can I ask you a little bit? I know in several places I've seen mention about the drainage issue and the replacement of the concrete that's there and needing to expand it a little bit, but also kind of change the sloping of it. Can you kind of walk me through that part of it?
So currently, the neighbor next to me is a little higher, so the land's a lot higher. So as the water is running off, it's kind of flat in that area, but then it does kind of a kind of huge slope. So over time, it's been kind of eating away at the far south curb, which is making that drop. Okay. Second, there's some drainage that's in there that is meant to take it out to the street, which it does that fine, right? But and the car is actually in front of where it's dropping. So if you go back to that shot, the cuts that are in the control joints that are in the concrete, the contractor did like 15 feet, which, it should be 10 feet, or else you get cracks on the concrete. So that's currently happening too. So my idea is, well, if we're going to put this new garage in, let's go ahead and fix the concrete issue to where it's not all sloping towards the middle, because there's lots of trees in the area, so all the leaves come down, they just kind of block up the drainage, and it ends up pushing that over to my neighbor, or not so much my neighbor, but to that gravel pit that you saw, which does eventually seep in there. So to prevent that from happening, what I like to do is basically get that to have just a natural slope to the gravel pit and put the drains in the gravel pit itself, so it catches any kind of water that goes that way, and I don't have to be like thinking about it at nighttime. Do I need to go clean out that drainage? Are the leaves on top of it keeping water from falling in there?
So the idea is that it will still take it out to the
Correct.
Street, it's just taking it...
Yeah, and not put water underneath that wall, because that wall is shifting dramatically and it is having issues. So I'm trying to keep that kind of dry or not get flood, because we know that's where water kills everything. So.
And the amount of concrete in the backyard will not be significantly different? As far as the
not
size?
significantly different.
Okay, because I know that you had included several photographs or several drawings of different ways of getting into the garage and how to have
Yes.
cars
Correct.
kind of organized outside of the garage. So the paving that is there now will be taken up in order to create this new drainage.
Correct.
But the amount of paving is not changing.
Yeah, not dramatically. It does change just a little bit. I think it moves up to like 1.3 inches, the curb that way.
Okay.
But the slope, instead of sloping towards the center up to drain, it will have a more gradual slope to the gravel pit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions today?
Well, I just have a question. Are you agreeable to a continuance to have some time to see what the neighbors have to say? And
Oh, absolutely. Like, if we're going to continue, let's get everybody on board and find out, what.
I'm sorry, Mark.
I just want to see what the neighbors do say, what their opinion is, and if there is conflict with them, I still would like to talk my case with them, because right now it's one-sided, and
Okay.
if they're saying one thing, I don't have a chance to say anything unless I talk to them.
Yeah, and it's not just comments of the neighbors. The commission has given you a little guidance, too.
I would ask, have you talked to the neighbor behind you, directly behind you?
I talked to the neighbor beside me. I haven't talked to the neighbor directly behind me because their property is turned. It's like 90 degrees, so it's basically all backyard and lot to them. And then the other one is a vacant. The one that's catty-corner to me is a vacant house, and I think needs mowing. It's the one that was discussed last week that had like the grass really tall.
Nice.
So. But
I'm asking that because sometimes, it is a large structure. Would it have an effect on the yard behind you as far as, the amount of sun that their yard receives, or, views or trees? Are you cutting any trees down to actually?
No, I don't have to cut any trees down, just because where the current structure was sitting, it's a lot further forward from the property line than normally you see these structures. So as far as sunlight, there's already trees there. Thoughts were to cut them down because if this was going to take place, I was going to ask my neighbor, now would be a good time if he wants to bury his electric, because he's got an electric cord going over my fence, and just to make it look cleaner and nicer and you see more brick, that was going to be a suggestion of mine for him. But other than that, no, I have not discussed it with a neighbor, and I'm, like I said, I'm open for that.
I would just maybe a suggestion, because we have had a few other garages that were built, and as time went on, you don't want to get down to the last of it and then have somebody come in and not have been specifically perhaps contacted.
Right.
You think that everybody knows what's going on, but not so all the time.
Right. I thought you guys mailed out letters to,
We do.
okay. So I thought that if they had a chance to say something, they can come say something, but,
I'll just say fair warning, we've had people come in and say that they did not receive the letter.
oh, really? Okay.
Yes, we
Well,
do
you know,
mail out to all properties, all adjacent properties, though. That's all.
But Mark, what your neighbors get is not all the detail.
Right.
It's a notice that you're going to do a garage. And, you know, most people don't, well, yeah, hey, you know, garage, I don't have any problem with that. But then, as they say, the devil is in the details. And there's a little bit of devil here, I think. So thank you for, you know, wanting to do some
Yeah,
improvement on your property and all that, but it really needs to be
Well,
a little different.
like I said, I'm open to hear their opinion, see what they say, see if it makes them mad or makes them happy. You don't know people. People are different sometimes, so. So I guess it's a continuation to find out
Okay.
opinions.
Would you want to continue it to the August 2nd or the September 6th?
August is fine.
Okay.
All
Well, the problem with
documentation will
August-
have to be,
Yeah.
What's that?
if you have the meeting with them between then and next Tuesday and are able to edit any of your...
Next Tuesday?
Yes.
We'll probably do September then.
Okay. I'd make a motion to continue HPCA 17-00043 to the September 6th meeting.
Second.
All right, any other? I have a motion from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Suzanne Broadbent, to continue to the September 6th meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, continued.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
HPCA-17-00047. This is an item that was continued previously for the property at 719 Northwest 20th Street in Mist Park. They proposed the replacement of the roof, conversion of the roof, construction of dormers, addition of shed dormers, and removal of 2 chimneys in order to expand the attic for living space.
Staff had recommended approval with condition on several items and denial of 2 of the items. Is the applicant?
Hi, my name is Maria Todd, and I live at 719 Northwest 20th.
Great. Thank you for coming today.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any questions from commission to start the conversation?
Well, I just have one. Hi, Mariette.
Hi.
It appears to me that, unless I missed something, that the applicants have made most of the changes that the commission recommended from the last meeting, and those are incorporated in 4, 5, 9, 10, and 11, making 7 and 8 moot. Is that how this is shaking out?
I believe that 7 and 8 become moot if the commission requires it to be so, yes. They have made some changes to the drawings. They have indeed agreed to not install the dormers that are furthest forward. The shed dormers, I believe, are located within the rear 30% of the side of the structure, along with the windows that would be in those openings.
So the dormer on the front, that additional dormer, that's still in play?
That is still in play.
It was approved at the last meeting.
Wasn't that the one that there was evidence that it had existed before? They went into
Presumed
the attic
historic.
and could see where the cut had been.
Yes, ma'am.
So we are looking at proposal B. Is that correct? In this, because in our packet, we have what you brought last time and
Correct.
the proposed changes.
Yes.
So what we're looking at is what starts on page 38 in the staff report. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That is what the staff has approved, version B,
Okay, thank you.
which the 2 side dormers are removed, and then the 2 shed dormers are scaled back significantly towards the back 30% of the house. But items, replacing the roof, removing the chimneys, and expanding the roof line, those haven't changed.
Okay, sorry, I was not at that meeting, so I'm trying to play catch up here.
Sorry, yes.
On page 42 of the staff report, do you have that in front of you? There's an elevation that shows the front and one of the sides. You have that? Okay, just so I'm clear.
Thank you.
That dormer there nearest the front on the side has been removed. You're not adding that, but you are adding the shed dormer at the rear?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the dormer at the far right-hand side on page 42, that's at the front of the house. The front of the house is to the right.
My 42.
Oh.
The back. Too many dormers. Okay, just to clarify for myself, that you, the applicant, you as the applicant are in agreement to not go forward with items 7 and 8.
Yes.
Okay. And the ones that we are going forward with on page 42 are the ones that are near the rear of the house.
Correct. The rear 30%.
Right. Okay. You ready for a motion?
I'm sorry, I was trying to figure out if my page 42 is different from everyone else's, but this commissioner is okay with the revised proposed proposal. So yes, if there are any other comments or questions, I would be happy to entertain a motion.
Okay. I would make a motion to approve items 4, 5, 9, 10, and 11 for HPCA 17-00047.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. With the specific findings noted by staff, under staff recommendations, and the condition that the shed dormers be constructed as proposed in the revised submittal located within the rear 30% of the historic structure.
Can we look at the specific findings really quick on that? Because like number 5 is about the initially proposed dormers and not...
Okay. To include the specific findings, 1, 2, 3.
So it looks like
And, I'm sorry,
4,
4 is also to be excluded.
Right.
yeah.
6 and 7, so that would, with the specific findings excluding number 4 and 5 and with condition number 1. Is that,
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, my second stands.
All right, we have a motion for approval from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Neela Crank-Clements. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Shall we address items 7 and 8?
Thank you.
Do we want to address items 7 and 8?
that's what I was going to say. Do we
Okay.
need to address items 7 and 8, Angela? Laura?
Yes.
We need to deny?
Let me flip back there. I believe that we do need to deny them because
Okay.
they are proposed items.
Okay, I make a motion to deny items 7 and 8 with prejudice, HPCA 17-0047, with the specific findings as stated by staff in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for denial with prejudice from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Suzanne Broadbent. For items 7 and 8, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, very good. I think that concludes the case.
Thank you, guys.
Very good, thank you. All right. Next case.
HPCA-17-00048 at 325 Northwest 25th Street. That's Mr. Klaus, Betty Cotes for Mr. Klaus. Construct a house, construct a garage, construct a trellis and deck, install a fence and gates, and relocate the curb for the driveway, install necessary walkways. And this was continued from previously. It's a new construction of the entire project.
you.
Some changes have been made to the drawings based on the comments by the commission previously.
Staff had recommended approval with conditions. The applicant present.
Klaus Raymond Phillip, 221 Northwest 24th, Oklahoma City.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Klaus, what's on the other side of Hudson? I didn't see any photographs of the existing homes opposite.
On the,
So that would be on the west side of Hudson?
like the northwest corner.
Yeah.
I have a photo here. It's kind of, it's a two-story residence. That's
So the
kind of
front-
looking from,
The front of the house faces would be the other side of Hudson where you're building.
yeah, it kind of faces both sides because it's a duplex, so you have a door from Hudson and from 25th.
Anyone else wants to see this?
I think part of our discussion last time was about, the houses on your block are fairly small, but once you get across Hudson, they start to grow quite a bit, and your house kind of fits in between those two kinds of scales, if I remember right.
Correct, yeah, and I have another drawing. Actually, I think it might be, here, you can pass this around if you want. That's kind of a map showing the two-story larger structures versus more of the one-story bungalows. But essentially, as you can see in the photo on the screen, that's just to the north is a two-story duplex, and then across the street on the corner is that two-story house that Neil was mentioning. And then on the south east corner, there's I think it's a two-story apartment complex. And then Caddy Corner is a one-story house. But it's really, I'd say, close to 50-50, if not skewed more towards two-story structures in that kind of area. But it is kind of a grab bag of different sizes. And I made an attempt to keep the scale, it is a two-story structure, but I try to keep it, from being too large. It is a slightly smaller lot, too. So.
Klaus, do you agree with all of the conditions set forth in the staff report?
I
Did you
do.
read all of those? Every single one of them? There's a lot.
There's quite a few, yeah. No, I do. I think there's one item regarding an awning in between the house and the garage that we discussed last time. And it seemed like the commission was pretty amendable to that design, but I think the staff had some reservations. So, we could discuss that. But if,
You're talking about the trellis that connects the house and the garage?
Correct.
Yeah. It's kind of an unusual feature in an historic district. And I think, and I could kind of, it's debatable. I think it's not a bad thing. But I think staff made a good point in that if it were a freestanding element, instead of attached to the garage and the house, then it could, it's a bit more temporary.
Right.
If someone wanted to make it, more historic in nature, like the rest of the houses might be, they could easily remove that element.
Right.
If that seems like an agreeable thing to you.
Sure. I guess freestanding, would I submit a separate proposal and then that would be approved, or how would that process work? Or could I get approval for everything else kind of and then issue a, like an amendment to that portion?
We'll see how the rest of the commission feels, but I think it may be something that we could go ahead and approve with that condition today, and then you would submit additional documentation to staff that shows how you would make it freestanding.
Okay.
And that could be administratively approved, right? A freestanding?
You
Or,
can approve that today with the conditions, and you can submit that to us.
I'd be amendable to that.
we had a lot of comments last time. It sounds like it looks to me like you listened to them well. And
Yeah, I tried. Actually, I'm kind of glad. I think to taking the two, because it was kind of a long period in between, but it gave me a chance to re-examine, and I think it's a better project as a result. I also met with Katie Fiddle and Lisa Chronister and got their comments as well, so I feel good about the project.
I have a question about concerning the trim, and I'm just wondering if I'm looking here, like on the windows, I'm not sure that it shows all the trim. You know, it just shows the board around it and then a window in the middle. You know, it doesn't show like a piece of trim that's going to hold the window in.
Oh, I think, let me see what page.
Yeah. I guess my overall question is, have you compared the sizes of the, you know, of that particular type of trim around doors and windows to other trim pieces in the neighborhood? And I only say that, and maybe it's just the size of the project or the thing, that they look a little, in the drawing, I'm not saying they are, they look a little thin, a little small. And so you have such a big project that that's kind of one of those details that's kind of telling later on that it just doesn't look heavy enough. So I don't know. Did you do some research into that as far as the size of the window trim on surrounding houses?
I did, and I'm not sure if maybe it wasn't updated perfectly on all the elevations, but essentially there's a window elevation. The trim is basically 3.5 inches wide,
Right.
which
I
is
have that.
pretty comparable to everything. And the depth is it's actually thicker than a normal trim. It's, you know, I guess normally you can get like a 3/4 of an inch
Right.
thick trim. This is actually 1.5 inches, but the siding butts up to it, so you'll have essentially 3/4 of an inch
Revealed.
revealed past the siding. But then on the other side, it gives it a little bit more depth, you know, where the window is.
Okay.
I move approval of HPCA 17-00048 with all of these specific findings and conditions as listed in the staff report.
Second.
Did we not want to attach? What was your concern, Craig?
What was that?
The pergolas it's already
It's
in there as a
It's
condition.
one of the conditions. Yeah.
No, the condition as listed in the staff report is
Yeah.
what is good with me. Okay. I have a motion from Mila Crank Clements, second from Heather Clemmer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Next case.
Okay, this is another continued case that you guys have seen before, HPCA-17-0056, for the property at 420 Northwest 30th Street, Michaela Mattingly, replacing 4 pedestrian doors, installing additional parking in the backyard, construction of a carport, installation of an awning at the front of the primary structure, and installation of signage at the primary structure. This is a duplex with underlying C3 zoning, I believe.
Dave Burshik, 420 Northwest 30th, and here on behalf of Michaela.
Angela, this was continued because we needed additional information, and we requested some revisions to the application. Were those things submitted? Is that what we have in front of us, the revisions and the additional information?
You have all current documentation at this time.
Was there new information attached to the original?
I was not available for that meeting. I was actually on vacation, and I have not worked this case at all. So
Okay.
I'm afraid you'll have to speak with the applicant.
Okay.
There were a couple changes, I think, since we talked to you last time. A lot of your questions were the intent of, or the purpose of the building. Since she just, we went and talked to the planning office, and since it was zoned C3, she has since changed her mind. She was originally going to try to occupy one side as residential and her business in the other. Since then, we found out that that would take certain variances and additional permitting and fireproofing and stuff. She decided that she's going to go ahead and just use that for a future expansion on one side and keep it as a retail business. She sells T-shirts and makes them, and so she wants to completely use the building for that purpose. So the main issue, I believe, then was that it came about was to be able to put French doors in the back for ADA compliance. And so she proposes to do that where the windows are on the east side at the back currently.
Excuse me, David, is that item one of the items that's included here?
It should have been. She had submitted all that information to Katie for the doors and a deck, actually. I know Katie's not here, but...
It's not listed on the agenda or in the packet, so I don't think that's something we can consider.
So,
I believe that all of the items that you're talking about right now are things that have been discussed between Katie and her fairly recently, beyond the period that we could do public notices for this.
okay, so
And so those can't be considered.
prior to that, for the June 9th submission, I guess, of the documents that she submitted, would you-
She'll need to submit that documentation to me. I don't have you listed on the application, so I can't
Okay.
go there, and I haven't received anything from her personally,
Okay.
but we could move forward.
Okay. The concrete,
Concrete is on the agenda, yes.
I think with the intended use, that we could maybe get an approval with that. So now there is commercial is what she's wanting to use it for. We did have a civilian here that stated and spoke that that was a concern because there is no parking currently in the area. And so she's proposing to add 4 additional parking spots in the back. And we did go ahead and modify that because I believe there was some concern of just the design of it originally. So there have been changes to that should have been submitted. And the carport or multi-purpose structure there that she's going to use.
I did have a question on where the sign goes. Is that what it looked like when she purchased the property
In the front of the building?
in the front of the building?
Yes, that is what it looked like when she purchased the property, and we've yet to been able to find anything of what was originally there, because there's actually lighting above it. We did change the submission for the awning from the original proposal since the last meeting because she had a metal one, and that was not preferred, and so she had submitted, I think, 2 examples or 2 options of a cloth awning to put up there.
And the details remain somewhat lacking on that. You'd have to work with staff towards completing those if it's improved.
Correct.
Is there a drawing of what the sign will look like?
Yes, those were submitted.
There are photo documentation of the metal signage, but that is no longer proposed. Is that accurate?
The metal,
Just the
correct.
awnings?
This is the 2.
There are computer-generated documents coming around to you that indicate the proposed canvas awning and signage, which will be inset into the existing opening that is stuccoed on the front of the house there.
So it's not going to be lighted signage now? It's just going to be printed on the awning?
It would be printed on the awning, and if possible, then she would like the lighted signing. She had informed me she submitted that package, but it would be like the old, I believe there's a store close to it that has like the old-fashioned bulbs on it, is where it was.
I'm sorry, she's proposing either or, to have it printed on the awning or to do a lit sign?
Well, there was both. It was option one is that she would like to do the actual marquee up where that sign was.
Okay, she's-
If that wasn't approved, then she would be happy with doing the cloth awning and putting the sign on the actual awning.
So is this one of the options? Is this option 2?
Yes.
That was option 1 that was passed out first?
No, option 1 was the metal signage. This is all option 2.
Oh, okay.
So those drawings are showing the same option that these drawings are showing,
drawings are,
just
yes,
in
she should have submitted.
additional views of the same. Okay.
Yes, the option one should have been submitted along with those. June 8th, I believe.
Keep in mind that these are not something that were reviewed and included in your staff report. And so if there's anything on these drawings that you have an issue with, you may want to address that at this time.
We may have discussed this at the last meeting, but is there documentation that an awning previously existed in that location? Do you have that documentation?
We cannot find record of what was
Okay.
there at that time. It was just a different material and structure, and there's a light that was already existing up there, and so that was the assumption that something was there before, and it's out of place as it looks now.
Typically, awnings can be administratively approved. However, an awning at this location would generally meet the criteria for administrative approval because it covers one entire opening of windows there. However, because of the changes in the roof and the lighting that is attached to that non-historic wall above that, staff would not be in a position to administratively approve something at that location. There's an obvious change to this structure that has occurred at some point.
So the fabric awning that you've passed around now, it has lettering on it. Is that lettering, are those like freestanding letters that are sitting on it, or?
That would be printed on the awning.
Okay.
What she was
It looked like
wanting
they
was
were
the
standing up.
original sign there that she would want. You know, if that could go, then she would put the lettering up there with some lighting. But if not, then she would just have it printed on the awning as it is.
Okay.
Okay, back to my question about lighting on this sign. I didn't quite understand the answer to that. It kind of got lost in all this other discussion. Are you asking for some kind of lighted signage as well?
Her first proposal was to actually have a lit, like a marquee sign up in that spot at the back.
Okay.
If that could not be the case, and then with that we had an awning also that was metal. So you guys did not like the metal awning, and so the signage with the marquee is what she would prefer to have on the building, on the face, and it'd be lit. And we had submitted those where it would just maintain the depth, the lumens, everything was within the city code there.
But that is off the table now, the lighted signage. That was part of the original metal awning.
The metal
that
awning was
kind
off
of-
the table. The signing in itself was not, because the signing was going to go above that.
So are you still asking for that?
Yes.
The lighted signing?
Yes.
Well, we have a comment here from Matt Guillory, who also came last month but is out of town this month, about the lighted signage and its effect on the Edgemere Park neighborhood as well as probably Jefferson Park. I don't see that, but he mentions two historic districts. And he's really concerned about that. It'd be visible at night from all the houses on Hudson. How do you address those concerns?
The house sits directly across, well, actually the street, but it's a commercial building right across the street, and there's also a vacant parking lot that another owner owns, or a vacant lot. It's not necessarily for parking. I don't see that being a big problem, and she would meet all the conditions with the amount of lumens that is, allowed.
But there's
And
residential on either side, is that correct?
There is residential on both sides. That's actually vacant to the east. I don't see it affecting really to the west because you've got the tree there, a whole other unit. And I don't see her keeping it on all the time either. It's a T-shirt shop, so it's not going to be something that would be disruptive. I mean, I really don't believe as it sits now.
I'm still unsure. I'm looking at a picture, and it looks like a canvas awning with lettering. Is the lettering standing up? It's actually...
No, that would be printed on the fabric if that was the option chose.
So where
And
would
she's
the-
fine with either or, she just really wants to
Where would
do
the...
what you guys are
Okay, I think there's two separate deals. One is just a lit sign on the existing wall there, correct?
Correct.
The other is adding the canvas awning with printed letters on the awning, right?
Correct.
So she's asking for one or the other?
Correct.
Okay.
And staff had said the fabric awning maybe is okay, but putting a sign on the wall, a lit sign on the wall, was not something that would work well.
Okay. But when you read the application, it says staff is saying to deny 11 and 12, but number 13 is install the fabric awning. So
11 and 12 is for a metal awning, a metal canopy, a canopy that had a horizontal piece with struts that come off the building, and then the sign would go above that, if I'm remembering right.
Correct.
I know, but it says 11, 12, and 13. I mean, it doesn't say. Do you see what I'm saying?
Staff recommended denial of 11 and 12 and approval of 13.
Okay.
But 11 and 12 is one option.
Okay.
And 13 is
Usually we
the
don't
other
have
option.
an option.
Right, yeah, so it makes it, well, I think 13 was added after our last meeting, and it didn't
Okay.
take off
I
11
see.
and
Yes, it
12,
was.
so, yeah.
That'd be correct.
Okay, so I guess they want to leave that on there as an option in case we felt, all of a sudden a change of heart or something, but, yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at the letter from the neighborhood. So if we approve the canvas awning, have we addressed the issues that the neighborhood submitted? Or a neighbor?
Matt Guillory?
Yeah. I think it was mainly the lit sign.
Yeah, Matt was here, as I recall, and the lit sign, but he also didn't like the metal awning, as none of us did either. And as I read his concerns here, he doesn't have a real problem with the awning, although he does say the font, size, lettering, et cetera, that's suggested is not clearly laid out, and so he doesn't feel that we can properly evaluate that today. The other point he made was the light-up sign would be even more conspicuously inappropriate, but that's already taken care of.
Before we get too much further with the discussion of item 13, it doesn't appear on the agenda, so it wasn't publicly noticed.
Oh, no. What?
So it can't be considered.
Okay.
So in that case, do we need to even continue 13? It's like it doesn't exist.
Right, I suppose continuing it doesn't hurt. I mean, that's what's going to happen anyway because it can't be considered anyway. So as just a practical matter, it gets bumped to the next meeting.
Can the canvas
Let's not
awning, though, be an administrative?
I'm sorry?
I thought you said that a canvas awning could be administratively approved.
Typically, canvas awnings would be administratively approved, but not on a roof of this nature with that cutout at that particular location. So I would definitely leave that to the commission to determine whether or not that was an appropriate location. I'd rather not waste their continuance since it's not on the agenda, just let's pretend, I mean, the comments that have been made so far, or any further that you have, are definitely most helpful to the applicant, but I'd like to have the continuance available to the applicant in the future if needed, rather than make a continuance for that specifically.
I have a question on the other items. Staff has noted conditions on some of the other items. Are you all in agreement with those conditions, and do we need to have additional information, such as staff on item 3 on the doors? Staff recommended the side and the back door were okay, but that the proposed,
There is a condition on the side and back door.
yeah, that the side back doors use undivided glazing.
Undivided.
With no applied or simulated buttons or grid?
Undivided glazing.
No divided lights. I mean, that's the condition, is that, just no dividers.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused because the pictures we just sent around showed a front wooden door with 3 small, it's on page,
15 of 21?
yeah.
They're submitting a wood door.
Well, that's what's showing on 15 of 21 shows that wooden door. Well, I guess, okay, so then 17, that's the door that you're proposing for the front door?
For the front door,
Is the wood with the 3,
with the 3 panes.
and what is the fiberglass door on 19?
Page 20 of 21. And you can't see it very well, but I think it looks like that those are divided lights. The panel with divided lights above.
Right, I guess that's where I'm confused. We've got doors on, there's a door on 17 of 21, there's a door on 19 of 21, and there's a door on 20 of 21.
Yes, ma'am.
Which door
All the
goes
doors
where?
at each location are different. The staff report points vaguely to the fact that all except the very front door are relatively not visible. Those 2 at the very back of the property are not visible at all. However, even fiberglass doors cannot have divided lights if those divided lights are applied rather than through and through. You'd need something interior and exterior permanently affixed with something between the glass if we were going by our glass guidelines. And these are all plastic material, and so likely would be inappropriate even on a fiberglass door.
Did staff approve the front door?
Staff has not approved the doors.
Staff recommended approval of the front door.
Okay,
Yes.
it's on here. The proposed
Yes.
front door is compatible, okay. Okay, that was the first condition. We can't talk about number 2. Number 3, there are no conditions.
It's a continuance. Continued recommendation for continuance.
Right, or if we,
And a request for additional documentation.
right, we can't approve, though. So I guess my question to you is, have you read those conditions and understand that if we approve what staff has recommended, that you will
Yes, she
follow
has
through
read,
with that?
she has read through all those and approves those, and essentially I was here on behalf of anything that was additionally submitted. In regards to, I think, the concrete, we changed the design of that, which should have been submitted June 9th for this meeting.
Okay, so what we can do is perhaps move to approve 3, 9. I don't know if is there a drawing of the carport?
That should have been previously submitted in there.
Oh, was that already approved?
not, and staff staff says that they need additional documentation. We don't have enough information.
Okay. It's what? It's behind the, oh, right.
And that sits directly behind
Right.
the garage. It's not visible from the street in any
Right.
way.
We would need drawings showing material and structure for that one, so,
And on 9, on the construction of the pavement, do we need additional drawings or something? Part of Matt's letter was about drainage and flooding in that area. And given that staff had recommended continuing 9 because of it being an impermeable surface, I don't know if there's a bigger conversation that needs to be had about that.
I went out there and measured everything, and as we've drawn, and to make sure you guys
we have that.
have the correct one. I used to actually, I was a project manager for a commercial concrete company, did residential commercial, worked with all the Oklahoma City mass projects, sidewalks, ADA compliance, and so I'm very familiar with that. And there is the area there to drain it towards it, and ideally we'd like to take some of it and go towards the back because there is some grass that's left there, and kind of just ground that, like a 1.2% slope, and then also kind of valley it in the current driveway that's there now. As you can see, it's in pretty rough condition, so that would all be replaced and actually probably end up in a better flow of drainage out towards the street where it should go. And I don't see any issues with that flooding any properties, neighbors or anything like that, as well as protecting the structure that's there and just keeping it away from the house and get it to the street.
Staff is not comfortable that it has been established that parking additionally is required at this property. Thus far, it's been used for residential. If it is, in fact, it is capable of supporting commercial, of course, since it is zoned for commercial, but it has not been established that there is any additional parking required in order to support that. It's entirely up to the commission, of course, but the need for additional paving at this property really should be established before we attempt to simply pave the entire backyard.
Is it required by code for the use to have a certain amount of spaces, or is it in an area where?
I don't believe it needs to have a certain amount of spaces, but as Matt may have been the person that was here last time, that was his main concern too, is there is no parking in that area. He owns a vacant lot that is across the street, and that was why he was inquiring about the intended use, because if it is going to be commercial, there needs to be an area for parking. And as you can see, that's a single drive, and it goes back very far and very deep, and ideally you don't want to be backing out that all the time, nor do you want all your customers that aren't familiar maybe with the location area and traffic to be doing that as well. And so by proposing the additional concrete, it would allow for a turnaround area in the back of the property, and then for the traffic to exit out front facing. And so I think it would be safer, and it's not excessive in regards to, I mean, it's only adding four parking spots, and then it would leave an additional one there that would make for ADA compliance that would be close to the entrance.
Does this property touch other properties that are being used as commercial?
I do not believe it does. I believe that both properties on each side, one's vacant, and I haven't seen anybody over at the other one. I have seen a vehicle there, but I haven't seen any.
So actually, even though the other properties on either side are zoned commercial, they're being used as residences?
I don't know if they're commercial or not,
Oh,
to be honest.
okay.
I don't, but this is zone C3, and so just for her not having customers that are encroaching on other people's properties to park, this would probably be the best bet to not affect anybody that's nearby.
I'd want to know more information on that. If they're continuing to be used as residences, then I think that would be a good case for no additional parking in the back.
If the adjacent properties are?
Due to, if you lived in a house next door and then you had commercial, you had cars parking in the backyard next door to you, to me, it's an unusual situation, in that it's a house, I mean, there's some places where we have houses that are used for commercial, but, you know, they're not in the middle of properties that are currently being used as residences. What is what type of business is this?
She sells T-shirts, so she print screening, essentially.
Angela, how best would the applicant go about determining need for additional paving? Other than saying she's going to run a business out of it. You made that comment before that maybe we should get that information.
I believe that when you work with the permit office and describe to them the business that you plan to propose within that structure, there are certain numbers of parking spaces required for that use. If it were a 7-Eleven, probably one car per client, or maybe half a car per client. If it were a restaurant, then those numbers increase depending on where it goes from there.
I would like to have that information before I would make a decision on this.
Would you be interested in continuing the project?
Yes.
I know you all want an answer, but I don't know if there's any particular item that doesn't have more questions. Is there?
Do we want to continue 11 and 12, or do we want to address the issue of the metal awning and electric signing just to get that
Off the table?
off the table if that's the direction that we are going?
I mean, I would make a motion to deny those two.
Second.
Is that where we're at? Well, I don't know. I'm looking at my...
And for
With prejudice, is that what you were following? I recommend denying items 11 and 12 with prejudice for HPCA 17-00056, items 11 and 12,
Second.
with the specific findings as noted in the staff report.
Second.
Right. I have a motion for denial with prejudice from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Suzanne Broadbent for items 11 and 12. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Can we do anything with the doors today? Item number 3.
I think we can, as long as the applicant approves the condition that's listed, not having the divided light on the fiberglass doors. Okay. Then I would move to approve HPCA 17-00056, item 3, with these specific findings and the condition as listed in the staff report.
Second.
I have a motion for approval of item 3 from Neela Crank Clements, second from Mary Jo Meacham. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 3 is approved. So that leaves items 9 and 10.
So I think we need to continue those.
It sounds like we need either more information, help us make
information.
decisions, and more detail on the carport.
And that's in the staff report, page 17 of 17. Under staff recommendation, additional information is exactly what we need. So you can get with Angela to provide that. Then if we continue it to the August 2nd meeting, everything's due by next Tuesday? Nope.
I think that the applicant will be much more comfortable acquiring the necessary documentation if it's continued to September.
Okay.
Angela, can they add then, since 13 wasn't on the agenda, can they add that to this application?
Yes, it will be added to the application. Thank you, Chair.
And we will remain officially silent on number 13 today.
Yes.
Is that right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
I make a motion to continue items 9 and 10 for HPCA 17-00056 to the September 6th meeting.
Second.
A motion for continuance, items 9 and 10 from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Neela Crank Clements. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, very good. Thank you for coming today. Thank you. Shall we move on to the next case, HPCA 17-00078 at 213 Northwest 24th Street in Jefferson Park. While Angela's wrapping up that one, we'll...
Sorry about that, guys.
We're good.
Oops, there we went.
Item 1, reconstruct and enclose deck required. Hi, are you the applicant?
Hello. I'm Betty Smith. I live at 420 Northwest 26th Street.
Great. Thank you for coming today.
We have a pretty long list of things we need to do, and I would like to ask for a continuance to September.
So the September 6th meeting? Continuance to the September 6th meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So moved.
I have a motion for continuance from Neela Crank Clements and a second from Mary Jo Meacham to continue to September 6th. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, number 65.
All right.
We have two items together here for Jackie Irwin, HPCA-17-00065 for the property at 601 Northwest 14th Street. The first item is the replacement of the back porch ceiling with beadboard, replacement of the portico-chair and front porch ceilings with beadboard, and replacement of non-historic windows at several locations.
Mr. Chairman, I need
Thank you. We are still at quorum, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, very good. Staff had recommended approval of items 2, 3, and 4 and denial of item 5.
Hello, I'm Jackie Irwin, 601 Northwest 14th, owner of the property.
Thank you for coming today.
Angela, what additional information did we get from the May 31st meeting?
I do not know.
You don't know?
I do not know.
In regards to which item?
I don't
Are we talking about the windows
I
or
don't
the
have my
ceilings?
packet from them.
I do also have my structural engineer, and architect, and window company representative here, in case there are any questions that I cannot answer specifically.
You have come prepared. I believe, if I remember right, there were questions in the last meeting, particularly at the front porch ceiling.
Yes.
And it appeared that it seemed that it was originally a plaster ceiling, but that you were going to do some additional looking and see other stucco houses in the neighborhood if there was a preponderance of stucco roofs or beadboard roofs, and it seemed that was an original component to the house, and it seemed like it was in good condition.
It seemed like it was possibly original. However, from everyone that I've discussed it with, plaster would not be able to be of that age. I mean, it had to have been replaced at some point because it's not a appropriate exterior material. It will collect moisture, and it will eventually just deteriorate, just as if you were, it's an interior material, not an exterior. So,
but it's all over the outside of your house.
well, not the stucco, the plaster ceiling.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
that it's a different material.
Okay.
It just like an interior plaster,
Gotcha.
a lath plaster. That's what's on those ceilings,
Gotcha.
not an exterior stucco. And so on the back porch, you can see we were getting electrical replaced inside, and they noticed some moisture damage that we had on the back. And so they started to kind of get in there and tear it out, and there was a lot of mold that was apparent. And that's when we were trying to figure out, what this material was, and it was just an interior lath and plaster. Somebody at some point had put that on, and we don't know, obviously, when that was done. I would prefer not to replace it with a lath and plaster because it's going to just eventually deteriorate again and create mold and mildew issues. So I would like to replace that with an appropriate exterior material as well as the front porch. I did do a little bit of research on some other homes on 14th Street specifically, 2 of which I included in the documentation that do have the exact material that I was requesting to replace it with, which was a beadboard material. So that's what's been done so far on that. I didn't know how many homes I needed to go knock on and see if I could take a picture of the ceiling.
So is it you're trying to get all of the porch ceilings to match with the same material?
Yes. And also be made of a material that's not going to collect moisture and eventually mold.
So what's wrong with the front porch ceiling?
It's also a lath and plaster material.
But there's no existence of, doesn't appear to be falling, or?
It is softening in some areas, which would indicate that there's probably mold and moisture up in there. We haven't investigated that just because if I don't get this approved, then we would just have a hole in our ceiling. So, but it does have some softening and it's some dipping in some areas. So it's more than likely mold damage and moisture damage on that as well.
So as I recall our conversation, our problem with approving the front porch ceiling was that it didn't seem to be, wasn't failing, and it might be historic. We just didn't know, although it seemed a little bit out of place, but we weren't sure. You're saying that your neighboring houses do not have that kind of plaster, and
Yes.
they do have the beadboard.
Correct.
So we don't know that it's a historic material.
We can only guess that it is not original to the house just because there is really no way that a lath and plaster material would have survived 108 years on an exterior surface.
You may have addressed it in your documentation. But so there is a stucco walls. How does the beadboard? What happens when the beadboard intersects the stucco? How does that
transition as far as a trim piece? Yeah. Well, that might be a better question for my trim carpenter than me. Stan, would you have any? Okay. That would just butt up next to the...
Sorry, I hate to bother you. But if you're going to come, can you come up to the front and speak into the microphone? So we are actually recorded for posterity.
Sure.
So that way, introduce yourself with your name and your address.
Okay, I'm Stanley Berry, 712 Juniper Lane in Norman, architect for. Typically, with the beadboard, it would have like a bed mold type molding around the perimeter of that. Typically like 1 3/4 inch size termination there, which is generally a historic element of that type of ceiling.
Okay.
Okay. What type of preservative would be for beadboard? Would it be just painted or some kind of lacquer or shellac or something? Or
This would be painted.
Painted?
Uh-huh.
Other questions or comments?
Ms. Irwin, staff recommended approval of items 2, 3, and 4 with one condition. Did you read that? Shall I read it to you?
Yes, if you
Okay.
refresh.
The window drawings with accurate Muntin dimensions and depiction of all details, including lugs on upper sashes, be submitted to staff prior to release of the CA.
Okay, that's in regards to the windows then. So I've got Jeff. Would you be able to speak on that? He's the representative from the window
No, I
company.
mean, we need the documentation in paper form submitted to staff.
So that way, when the project is done
Yeah.
and the inspection, folks go out to look at it and make sure that everything was done appropriately, they have something to look at and say, oh, yeah, you
Okay.
did it right.
This portion of the CA, I have outsourced to I've hired the window company to submit all that information pertaining to the windows. So I would not be able to speak to that specifically, that portion of it.
So you have a new window company or this person here?
Yes, Jeff.
Okay, Jeff.
Why not?
So staff is recommending approval of replacement of the non-historic windows. But before you get the certificate of appropriateness is released, they need window drawings with accurate Muntin dimensions and depiction of all details, including lugs on upper sashes.
Were those not submitted already?
That was submitted already?
I believe so.
I think it's
Not
not.
in complete detail? Okay.
Is that something you can provide?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, then, unless there's another comment on items 2, 3, and 4 from anyone? No? I recommend approval of HPCA 17-00065, items 2, 3, and 4, with the specific findings and the condition as listed in the staff report.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval, items 2, 3, and 4, with condition from Neela Crank-Clements, second from Heather Clemmer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Those items are approved. We talk about item 5. Well, it hasn't failed to the drama that the other sides have. It
Yeah.
seems to be starting to show some signs and evidences that it is not probably historic. So we would be removing a potentially non-historic material.
Typically, we do require documentation to show that something is failing and needs to be replaced, and I don't see that in our packets. If there's not a hole in it, what do? Do you poke a hole in it? I mean, you say it's getting soft, so how do you judge that? I don't know. But that's something I do struggle with on this item.
There's also the concept that if it's not historic, then you're removing a non-historic material, which doesn't necessarily have to be deteriorating to be removed.
And to see if there's a historic material, because we talked about with the porte cochere, that because there was a hole and we could see wood, we're asking her to poke a hole in the front ceiling just to prove that, I mean, that sounds, I'm with you, there's something about replacing something that's not broke, but do we really want her or somebody else to have to come back in 5 years or less, given the crazy weather we've had recently, because it's completely failed or caused some kind of electrical problem?
But then what material, are we saying that beadboard, I think, is what you're proposing for the front
Correct.
porch? I know there was some comment on that, perhaps not being appropriate.
But you've said that the other stucco houses on your street have
Correct.
beadboard roofed, or
Yes.
beadboard ceiling to porches on them, right?
Correct.
And the neighborhood comment was that the committee met following a site review and determined that the homeowner has repaired the plaster ceiling on the front porch. We are unaware of other homes in the neighborhood with plaster ceilings.
I'm not sure I understand the neighborhood report, because they, a little contradictory to me. Is that, am I right or wrong about that?
Well, they said that they had trouble finding plaster porches and that
Right.
sort of thing. They said, we agree with the staff report, when the staff report recommended denial of that item. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the plaster ceiling therefore may or may not be original.
Right.
I think beadboard sounds like the better option to me.
Me as well.
Are you making a motion, George?
No, I wanted to get the conversation, kept that moving. If anybody had anything else.
I'm not prepared to make a motion for approval, so.
I can't make a motion for approval. So what, is there additional information that would help, unless there's someone else that is willing to make a motion, is there additional information? Okay, very good.
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Item 5, HPCA 17-00065. What I'm trying to figure out is the conditions that I need to put in, and it may be that the porte-cochere, no, we're not talking about that the front porch ceiling is partially visible from the street, and that beadboard is a typical historic material for porch and porte-cochere ceilings. I think those are the only two conditions or specific findings that I see that are needed.
And maybe number 8 on item 5, that some information suggests that the back porch and or porte-cochere, if we add front porch, have been altered.
I don't have a problem with it. Aren't we talking about the front porch?
I guess we're just talking about the front porch. We don't have the back porch on here at all, do we? We're just talking about the...
Yeah, we've already approved that.
That was the one that was...
Right now, we're only talking about the
Okay.
front porch.
Okay.
Okay, so those findings,
A finding that it appears the plaster is not the historic material for the roof of the front porch,
yes, let's add that, yes. Yeah.
and that a plaster ceiling is perhaps not an historic material for that condition.
Plaster ceiling is not necessarily the historic condition, and items, findings, what in 8?
That the front porch ceiling is partially visible from the street, that beadboard is a typical historic material for porch and porte-cochere ceiling. I don't see anything else that...
Also, somewhere I might point out, I know we have it somewhere in the packet, but the soffits off the roof they do appear to have some sort of beadboard material or some sort of beadboard-looking material. Maybe it's more of like a tongue and groove. But those are what the soffits of the house underneath the roof are made of. So that was our thought process in changing it to beadboard so that it would essentially match the soffits from the roof.
Another material that's already present.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else?
It's kind of difficult to see because it's all white, but...
Right.
Yeah, there's a shot somewhere. Yeah, it's all that portion. It appears to be like a tongue and groove or beadboard material.
That's my motion.
Concludes the motion. Very good.
I'll second.
I have a motion for approval of item number 5 from Suzanne Broadbent, second from Heather Clemmer. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay. And I only say that because we don't have photographic evidence in our packet that it's failing, and we do typically require that for other cases.
Okay.
So.
Paula, do you need a hand count or anything? You're good. Okay, very good. All right. So that concludes that case. Shall we move on to the next one, which is also yours?
Correct. You guys won't get rid of me yet.
And this one is for the demolition of the existing garage carriage house, reconstruction of carriage house, removal of part of the existing driveway at the numbered street, installation of a new driveway at Dewey, and relocation and reconstruction of existing stone walls. This is looking north into the property from the numbered street. And this is from Dewey.
Staff had recommended approval of item 1, approval with unique circumstances on item 6, continuing item 2, and continuing item 7 and 8. Okay. Shall we start with the demolition?
Well, is it important to approve the demolition while, and yet continue the construction of the new garage? That kind of bothers me because I've seen that people very often demolish the garage and then never build a new one. And to me, that looks worse than what you've got here.
I absolutely have every intention of building a new garage, but yes, I do understand.
Yeah, I mean, is there a need for us to approve demolition before you, if we don't?
I think it's a safety concern. A safety concern.
That would be your reason for encouraging us to go ahead and approve the demolition today.
Correct.
If we don't end up approving, if we end up continuing the new structure today.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm comfortable approving the demolition, unless anybody else wants to discuss.
Could it have a condition with the future approval of a new structure?
I don't think we can do that.
Can we do that?
No.
So, I think other commissions and committees have tried that in the past, and it's not flown legal muster. Right. Yeah.
Never hurts to ask.
When you say safety, I mean, another month, if that's what we need, I mean, are you concerned it's going to fall in on somebody?
Let my structural engineer speak to that, if that's okay.
Richard Stapp, 3121 South Air Depot in Edmond. I reviewed and inspected this property on April 27th and recommended that she demo it as soon as absolutely possible. It is absolutely possible that this could come down at any time. There is no linkage to any foundational elements that can be traced all the way to the roof. So any forces, I mean, not even half code forces could bring this building down rapidly and do damage to other structures around it or to people. So it's definitive that it should be taken down as soon as possible. Any other questions?
Would it require a new foundation also?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no foundation there. It's just a slab, at least what I could see.
Right.
What's holding it up is just a few posts on the inside that are poorly placed.
Now you can see one on your second photo, number 2 on your report. You can see that steel post just kind of sitting on the inside of the window.
And I move to approve HPCA 17-00087, Item 1, to demolish the garage with the specific findings listed in the staff report.
Second.
A motion from Neela Crank Clements to approve item number 1, second from George Massey. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, item number 1 is approved. Shall we talk about the new garage?
Yes.
Staff had recommended continuance for a few reasons. Angela, were you a part of this staff report, or was this Katie?
I was.
Okay.
Finally, we get to some that I worked on.
So it seems that the garage overall is, it's meeting the setback, and actually fairly accurately seems to replicate the historic garage that we've just approved.
We're trying to replicate it as perfect as possible.
Right.
I mean, obviously with modern day materials, but yes, we would like to replicate the roof that is on the existing main structure onto this structure instead of doing a composition roof. But outside of that, we would like to replicate every feature as close as possible.
And this garage is a little bigger than the one that was the previous one?
It is 3 feet wider, I believe. It is also 1 foot higher. The height is because of a code issue with the window. I will actually probably bring Stan back up here to talk about why that was, because it has to open, I think, a certain... And that is the only reason it was any taller.
Okay.
Once again, Stanley Berry. In the design of this, we increased the height just a bit to accommodate a little bit taller window to meet the egress requirements with what was there. Even dropping the floor height of the second floor down, it was still necessary to increase the height just a bit to be able to accommodate the egress requirements of those windows. And as she said, we increased the width just a bit to accommodate the modern cars and that type of thing on that.
Do you have alley access?
Alley access? There's not an alley. There is just an entrance off of Dewey that goes into the structure. Yes, correct. But there's no alley behind it.
So this was a little unusual in that you've got a drive on the numbered street on 14th that comes up from 14th Street that goes under your porte-cochere and heads back toward the garage.
Correct.
But that's not where your garage access actually is.
No,
It's
and
off of-
the width of the porte-cochere is very narrow and not really accommodating for
Your aim
drivers.
Aim is good. Your aim is-
I don't know that I would be able to back up. It fits a car by 3 inches, I'll put it that way. So we decided that probably off of Dewey would be a better option.
So you would propose to leave the drive in place?
Leave the front drive in
Right, the
place,
14th
correct.
Right, through the porte-cochere and then
Correct.
remove it beyond that.
Yes.
Well, I do have a question here about the size of the garage, because it's already 600 square feet, which is more than we would normally approve, and the new one is even bigger than that, and it's bigger than the 5% of the lot by 80 square feet. And I know the neighborhood says that's okay, but here we go again. I mean, I don't understand why it needs to be so much bigger.
It's only 3 feet wider to fit a two-car with garage for, I mean, I guess you could fit.
It's because you're changing the side on which the garage door will be.
Yes, side of Dewey. So that side would be a little bit wider to accommodate a two-car garage width, but it isn't any different. It's the exact same length. Yes, so it would just be 3 feet, and that's just because of a two-car, just because it would accommodate a two-car garage that way off of Dewey. And that's the only reason.
And did it grow toward your back property line? Is that what did you just say that? Or did it?
You know, I don't know. Towards the front?
Grew toward the house 3 feet?
house.
Okay, okay.
And I don't know if this makes a difference or if I should even mention it, but if we were needing to go in a few feet on the width to accommodate the few feet on, or in a few feet on the length to accommodate the few feet on the width, that is something we would be willing to do. I just didn't know, what would be approved or what would not be approved or things like that. So we're willing to go back to the drawing table on things that we need to, but.
Well, it is problematic to ask us to approve a garage that is exceeding any of the guidelines. You heard some of the discussion earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you'd be losing anything to come back to the 600 square feet.
Sure.
Something that fits the guidelines.
Yeah.
5% may be a little bigger than 600 square feet. I don't know,
Yeah.
because I don't have those.
Our only thoughts on this particular carriage house is that it is so architecturally significant to the home that it's not necessarily just a garage. It's actually, a part of the home because they did make it with the same Spanish Mission style, and it has a prominence of its own that maybe a lot of other garages don't have. So it's not, you're not going to see it and be like, oh, that's a garage. It's an architecturally significant piece of the house.
Yes, and it is. It is pretty, and what you're going to replace it with is quite attractive, too. I still think we need to stay within the guidelines on size.
What is 5% of the lot?
600 square feet.
So would it be, so if we go back to the drawing board and take 3 feet from the length and do that on the width and keep the same width, is that something that would be?
I think you can massage that in a lot of different ways, but it sounds
Okay.
like the commission wants it to not to exceed the 5% of the size of the lot. So, whether you make it.
So 600 square feet would, either way you bite it.
Right. However, however you kind of
Okay.
massage those proportions. If you want to keep that width, I think personally, you'll never really. It will be fairly imperceptible. However, you massage that those proportions. If you want to keep the width so that you get the garage door, width in this direction or the length in that direction. So.
Okay.
And staff also had some comment about comparison drawings between historic and proposed windows as a part of the reason for continuance.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
As part of the reason for continuance on the new carriage house, staff had asked for required documentation, comparison drawings between the historic and proposed windows.
Staff would like to verify with the applicant that the windows are in fact matching those, and she and I can work together towards doing that fairly rapidly, I think.
Okay.
If we're going to continue potentially item 2, don't we need to continue the other items as well because we need a new site plan?
Yes, I would say yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then I move to continue item 2, 6, 7, and 8 to August or September?
Can we get August?
September.
Okay. To September 6th.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion for continuance for items 2, 6, 7, and 8 from Mila Crank Clements, second from Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Okay.
So we are going to take a 10-minute break, and we will reconvene at 4:12.
read it on that, so I was like, okay.
Okay, fantastic.
All right, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, she may be able to, okay. Oh, okay. I'm one right across the street, right where, you know, the new parking garage. You can't do that one. Okay, okay.
When did you get back? Heather?
Okay, but now I have a question. I'm confused.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, it's not 2, 4, and 5. Oh. Okay. So do we have staff recommendations? Okay, so these are your recommendations? Okay, and then we'll pick the criteria. Okay. Perfect. All right, thank you.
All right, if we could start to regather, we will reconvene momentarily. All right, Angela, you ready?
We are ready.
Good. All right. Let's kick off our next case.
HPCA-17-00010. This proposal is by Andrew Long and Tim Zajac. It's for the demolition of an existing one-story mudroom on the rear of the structure and construction of a two-story addition there at that same location. Repair and replacement in kind of porch columns on the side porch, and construction of a screened porch within the confines of the side porch.
Thank you. Staff had recommended approval of item 1, approval of item 2 with conditions, and continuing items 3 and 4. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Tim Zajac. I'm the architect involved with the project.
Welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you.
And I'm Andrew Long, 1001 Northwest 14th, the owner of the property.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Long, do you agree with the conditions listed in the staff report? There were 2 for item 2.
Yes, as to number 1, and yes to number 2.
And Angela, you're okay with shouldering the burden of receiving those items?
Yes, ma'am.
And, okay.
After reading the staff report, did you have any comments or on items 3 and 4 in regards to the...
I was going to let Tim speak to that.
Okay.
As far as the porch is concerned and the screened in, the way that we look at the porch is the 3 columns that you see are all veneer columns. The structure is only at the corner conditions themselves. And so what you have, you can kind of see it in the picture that's depicted above. You've got quite a bit of rot going on from water damage, those sorts of things. We'd like to replicate, as we've done with the addition and as we're doing with the repair of the porch rail on top of this porch, we're wanting to replicate everything that's there. That's fine. In regards to adding the screened-in porch, what we've tried to do is create a situation that falls within the plane of the columns, but allow the columns to read out like they would if there was no screen. Because a good example in your packet, the screen that we've selected, it's hard to see because the picture was to only depict the balcony. But if you look at the porch area, that's what you're going to see from the street with the screen. It's going to be in shadow. It's dark. You won't read a screen because it's not an aluminum screen that'll show and depict light. So what we've tried to do here is set the screen back on the plane to allow the columns to read out, and we're not actually attaching to structure. We're attaching to the veneer that is around the structure. So that's the premise of how we're trying to screen this porch. That way we allow the maximum use of the porch. It depicts itself correctly from the street. It depicts itself correctly as you walk up to it. It depicts itself correctly as you grab a hold of the door on the back. So I guess what I would do is entertain comments from commission on the issues that we have with that.
So are you setting the screen entirely behind the column, or is it partially engaged with the column?
If you look at the section, it's just inset within that column. So if the column is 8 inches, then my thickness is only 5 inches. so that from the street, I read through, that column reads through. It reads as a corner, at the corner condition, it reads its plane as you look at it in an elevation view. You always see it for what it is. I've not allowed any plane to line up.
So when you do that, then do you cut through what you're calling the 1-inch solid wood column crown?
No, I'm just infilling between. All of these will be
Between both, so there'd be a really skinny one at the top and then a big one?
Well,
Looking
at the
your
top
section.
condition, what we've created is, if you look at the section that I provided, what I've called a head rail, and that picks up the 4 inches that you have at the cap of the column. Because in your column condition,
Right.
you've got the crown trim, then you've got what I'm calling the cap, then you've got a 1-inch trim below that, and then the column itself. So I'm allowing all those things to read as they are, and as if you see in my section, what I did was I just created a head rail that was deeper so that line could continue. But the screen panel that I'm creating is just infilled between these veneer columns.
Right. My question was, when you look at the section, it looks like that there's 2 pieces of mesh, the larger one and then the little skinny one. But in reality, you're saying that's just one piece.
Yes. If you look at the
So that
elevation.
one piece
If you
you'd
look
have
at
a-
the elevation.
you'd have a
What you're
cut.
seeing in the section, is beyond, and you're seeing that 1-inch crown trim.
Uh-huh.
But if you look at the elevation, that doesn't come all the way across. The only thing that follows all the way across is at the head condition.
Right. Well, I'm looking at it says there's, what you call one, I'm sorry, it's called the column band. So on the column band, is there a cutout where the frame insets into
No,
that?
it does not come across. If you look at the elevation, that doesn't come all the way across because it's not part of my panel. It is only part of the column itself. And that's why my screen panels, I'm calling them panels because it's inset to these individual columns that are on that porch. So the horizontals that I've created are at the head condition and the base condition. And then I've also created a solid base to the screen for allowing the overall screen sections to be small enough so that I don't have maintenance issues over time with wind or hail or anything else that's going on.
So you've got wood at the top that lines up with the top of the column.
Correct.
Trim or capital. And then on the sides, you've got additional pieces of wood trim that stick out as far as that little piece of wood kind of collar trim that's just below the top of the column. So,
Correct.
So in reality, the screen doesn't make a notch around that little piece of wood trim straight down. But there's also a wood, it's probably painted white or something like that kind of makes the column appear a little bit thicker than, is that right?
I guess in an elevational view, it
Right,
would.
right.
From a straight elevational view, it would. But that's the reason for setting it back off of there. Because if you actually walk up to it and look at it with any angle and you see it with any sun, then it doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't
never actually
thicken
see
that
it
column.
straight on.
The
right.
only time that it gives you that appearance is if you're looking at it directly
Sure.
in elevation.
Sure. I'm trying to think, sometimes have we seen these screens before where they sit entirely behind the column rather than trying to infill in between the column?
Yes, starting with something that's constructed on the floor and going straight up to the ceiling.
I see.
I could see that would be a solution if I were dealing with existing structural columns. I don't even know, honestly, I don't even know that the wood trim that's on those columns right now is original, because it's a veneer around the structure itself. Of those 3 columns that are on each corner, only one of them has structure to it.
And do you know what that structure is? Is it wood or is it a steel post, or do you know what's inside there?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. I think it's
like a
wood.
wood 2x4.
Okay.
I guess my comment would be that it, it says enclosing front porches significantly alters the character of the building and is not permitted. I mean, it doesn't to me appear to be like a historic enclosure, like a screen, like a traditional screen, or like I mean,
I guess I'm not
it
understanding.
doesn't look like it looks like it's going to have more like a contemporary shade thing that you can't see through, or that has different you can see through some, you can see through others more, but it's going to look more like it's not going to look like a historic piece of screen, do you think?
I contend that the picture I showed you as part of your documentation, I contend that it'll look exactly like that.
And the one you're referring to there is on page...
It's the balcony picture on...
24.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, is it page 24? Kind of the very last one?
I think...
In just the... I don't have a number.
Okay.
In just the picture profiles, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the 7th page, it says balcony. And again, that picture is trying to just show the balcony rail, but if you look below that, you see that where it is open now is black.
Uh-huh.
To me, I contend that that's exactly what you're going to get with the screen. You're going to get that. You're going to get that exact same look.
I believe that's somewhat misleading to some extent. If you look on page 24 of 24, this is the exact same photograph. It has simply been cropped differently to show you a different portion of the balcony itself.
But, I mean, I'm looking at page 23 of 24.
Oh, sure
It's
it is.
not a deep dark
I
shadow.
contend that it is, because that's a zoomed in photo, which you're not going to get from the street. What I'm talking about is reading it from the street. When you're driving by or you're pulling up to the street, you're not going to have that view. That's a zoomed in view. And if you look at it, and I'm not trying to be difficult, Angela, but if you look at that, it still is darker. If you look at the brick beyond, okay, because that brick facade goes past that applied column. So you're seeing on the outside of the house, you're seeing the brick. And on the inside, you see nothing. You see black. The only reason you see anything behind the line of that column is you're seeing the white trim around the door.
I mean, I'm looking at page 23 of 24. You can see all the way through.
Well, absolutely.
But you wouldn't be able to see, I don't think it would have that same appearance if you had screen. We don't.
Every moment of every day, I agree with you 100%.
This one's right. I mean, we've looked at these, this one's a tough one.
We have had instances in the past where the screening material used in both windows and doors has created a black box effect on the house. That has been problematic. It was never intentional. I would hope that under these circumstances, we're not intending for that to happen at this time.
I guess what I'm saying is that, and this is hypothetical, is that if it was the historic screening, if that was the result, then the result of historic screening I would feel comfortable with. Anything other than that, I'm not comfortable with, in that I don't know, I don't feel like that the result will be the same.
My intention with the screen is so that it doesn't bring, if you used a screen that was historic, that would have been used when
Yeah, just regular.
it would show up because it would have been aluminum. And that's not the intent here. My intent here is for the screen porch to not call itself out. What I'm trying to do is leave the columns exactly as they are so that when you drive by on the street, you read the columns. That's what would happen with, in my opinion, that's what would happen with the white columns being allowed to project themselves, allow the sunlight to hit them just like they would, allow the shadow lines to hit them just like they would. So that's the concept behind having the screen exactly where it's at. Then on top of that, since it is just a veneer column that we're looking at in all these situations that need to be replaced in most conditions because of the wood, the rotting damage, what I'm trying to do is maximize the use of that porch that we have.
And these that are against the house, Tim, are those going to be as narrow as they currently are?
Pardon?
The columns, the pilasters against the house, are those going to increase in size?
Balusters.
The pilasters, the wood pilasters that are engaged against the brick.
No, everything is being recreated just as it is.
Okay, so the depth of that pilaster will match the existing.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the size of the columns matches the size of the existing.
Columns stay the same. We are trying to recreate what is there, and then I apologize. Maybe I'm not explaining it right. What I want to do is rebuild these columns, bring them back, and then I am basically creating, in my mind, what I'm creating is an infill panel between these veneer columns, and that's two separate entities. The reason for the setback, the reason for the way that I've marked it, all of those reasons that I've tried to explain. So what you would read now, in my mind, is you would read it as it reads on the house presently. The only thing I've added is that solid element at the base. And that's because, in my mind, you can't have that screen be floor to ceiling.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how the rest of the commission feels. And I get what you're saying with the screen and the column. I think that wainscot or that kind of pony wall is kind of that's the most impactful issue, because then you've got this big kind of addition. Instead of you've gone to a lot of trouble to try and make the screen disappear, make the column still read, and then you've got this new kind of wall that goes around this side porch that is not a very common feature in an historic house.
Yes, and it's twofold. Of course, it's functional first, on trying to create the screen panels so that I don't have maintenance issues with those. But second of all, they won't be seen. You won't be seen from the front due to the landscaping and the way that the beds are all created. And the only time you would pick it up is if you were to slow down enough. Let's see if hands up. There shows it directly off the street, the current picture. So you wouldn't see the panel at all. The only time you would see it is at the drive at an angle. So it really would not be. It's not invisible. I'm not going to try to create that. Oh, you can't see it at all. That's not a true statement. But it is barely visible due to the landscaping, the width of the drive, the relation to the neighbor, all those things. It's really very insignificant.
Also, there's a center post. Is that there now?
No, it's open, as you see in.
So you're adding a center post?
I'm having to add that, yes. I'm having to add that. Again, that's a functional element. It's maintenance issues for the screens themselves.
span that runs down the driveway?
Yes.
Yeah, there's currently center posts there. You can see that on the HPCA detail, on the side porch pictures
It wasn't really,
I pulled it up. This picture showing the gutter spout going down, down the driveway. You can see back there by those flower pots, there's two posts that's in the center.
okay.
Not that
But
one. One more.
Those are
Those columns, yes.
those would be the columns, but on the drawing, it's showing
She's talking about.
something labeled as a 4-inch center post as an addition.
Yeah.
I understand your intent, but I just think there's too many things. The addition, when you add up all of the items, that it goes back to enclosing a front porch is not permitted. There's just too many things between the added columns, the material that's not historic, the addition of the kickboard, that all of those together significantly change the existing porch.
But this is a side porch. Do those still, all those items still? I'm just asking the question.
I think because it faces out toward the street, so I think that's kind of...
It faces the street. I mean, that's
It's
just...
not. It's on the side of the house, but it's still, it's still a part of the front of the...
Right.
And
Every side porch would be, by definition, visible from the street.
Right.
Sure, yeah.
And that was the only reason I was making the reference that I was. The details that are, the details that seem to be hung up, that we seem to be hung up on, aren't going to be actually visible.
So, Tim, you're indicating that all historic, possibly remaining historic fabric of the posts will be completely removed and replaced, and no historic fabric will be remaining?
Well, I don't know.
Thus, any attachment will not be damaging historic fabric?
Correct. Because I would contend on top of that, I don't even know that the material that's there now is even historic.
But I don't know that it's not.
I'm saying that same thing. I'm just adding that onto it. I'm not, that was the whole reason for my proposal, because to back up a second, I would agree 100%. In a totally different situation, I would agree that I would have been nudged by the guidelines to bring it all the way back, not touch anything, be kind of like we were talking about with the trellis earlier today, freestanding. It's a separate entity. But I don't know, and I'm not seeing these columns as they're the structure that I'm tying to.
But it's the design details that are going to be relevant, not the structure so much.
Again, I just think, when you continue, you have to add all of these things up to actually get to accomplish what you're after, which is the piece at the top, which is actually, whether they're original or not, but we'll go with that they're historic, that the columns, that you're changing those to some degree to make your project work, then adding the screen, and then adding is there a door or anything to this?
On the back.
On the
Yes,
back.
Non-facing to the street.
Those are my comments.
Will the balcony railing be removed under any circumstances? Removed
top
and
railing?
replaced, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
No. Again, we're wanting to replicate and
Can't replicate them necessarily is the thing. So if we don't touch it, we're good. If we have to touch it, we may have problems. As far as code requirements.
The top balcony railing? It's rotted. It's two of the. Yeah, they fell over. it's rotted.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, it's beyond repair.
And you've checked with code requirements to see how tall you'll be required to install that? And is there a change?
There's no change because there's no access.
Okay. There's no door above?
Okay.
The elevation doesn't show any door or window at that part of the house.
No, it is not. I did not include that. You're right.
So if there's access out onto that roof, then it'll have to be a different railing height on it.
And is that railing included in this application? Which item
It's
is
not
that?
included in the application itself, to the best of my knowledge, but as far as I can tell, it's included in the drawings.
So it's included in the drawings, but it's not something we can approve because they've not applied for it. Is that right?
There has been no request to replace it at this time.
Okay.
Which we can add.
And that's my fault. I apologize. I presumed it was a maintenance.
I'm sorry, on the railing, on the top railing, on your drawing, on the section, it says existing and to remain.
Yes. As it's also noted, obviously that's an oversight on my part in how I've shown that. I've noted that it was to be repaired. If you look on the plan, refurbish or replace existing wood railing. So there's some discrepancy, obviously, in how I've noted that. I looked at it as a maintenance issue because it is all rotted out.
Right.
And that's why I didn't feel as though
It's not.
this is a mistake on my part.
It's not a problem. I don't think. I mean, it just. I don't think it's necessarily a problem. It's just not specific.
We just need to document it.
What?
We need to document it properly for
Right.
them, for that, and move forward with it perhaps in August.
So we're stuck on items 3 and 4. Staff has recommended a continuance, which we've discussed a number of their concerns here and some of the commissioners' concerns. I mean, unless someone's willing to make a motion to approve it or deny it,
I mean,
continuance is the best option.
Right. Well, I've looked at the addition. I don't have any questions on the addition.
Items 1 and 2?
Yeah, items 1 and 2.
Do we want to move forward with those?
Yeah. I'm ready to make a motion to approve those unless there's discussion. Approve HPCA 17-00090, item 1 with the specific findings, and item 2 with the specific findings and the conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion for approval from Neela Clements, second from Heather Clemmer for items 1 and 2. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So 1 and 2 are approved with condition. Items 3 and 4 we have concern about the design and might want to see a continuance.
We can continue those 2 items, and we can meet again with staff.
If you'd like, any changed documents would be due by this coming Tuesday, though, unless you wanted to continue to September 6th.
September, please.
Make a motion to continue HPCA 17-00090, items 3 and 4 to the September 6th meeting.
Second.
The motion for continuance of items 3 and 4 from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Mila Crank Clements. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, those items are continued.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 11 on our docket was continued to the August 2nd meeting earlier today, so that will push us on to item number 12.
Item 12 is HPCA-17-00093. That's for the property at 300 Northwest 17th Street. It's the replacement of several windows, some on the back and some here on the west side. This says Philip Busey and Bruce Bacchus of Bacchus Paint.
Staff had recommended approval of the application.
Yes, I'm Bruce Bacchus, and I always need a lot of help. So Coach Angela and Coach Katie coach us through here, which we appreciate. So you won't see the shipping containers on the 3rd floor. I thought that was good advice. Thank you. And thank you for your civic service to our city, keeping it beautiful. So enough.
I just wanted a clarification from Angela. Page 1 of the staff report, it says that the windows are on the rear 35% of the house. If you open it to page 5 of 5, it says they're within the rear 30% of the structure, which is
My
correct.
apologies. Initially, I had no dimensions on this, and I was measuring from the county assessor's website, and Bruce has assured me that the windows are located within the rear 30% of the side of the structure.
Thank you. Okay, I'm ready to move approval of HPCA 17-00093, item 1, to replace windows with the specific findings that are included in the staff reports.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval from Mila Crank Clements and a second from Mary Jo Meacham. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
On behalf of the Buseys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
HPCA-17-00094. This is 1612 Classen Drive. Basil Ryan by Sam Gresham. Installation of, oh my, we have quite a list.
A very long list.
We do. We have installation of new TPO roofing at the addition and at the existing garage, repair and replacement of clay tile roof on the house, replace existing siding on the non-historic addition on the side with stucco, installation of new windows in locations in the non-historic addition, restoration of the garage door opening at the historic garage, installation of a garage door as well, presumed, construction of an addition at the rear of the garage to expand that for parking, replacement of the existing concrete driveway paving in place and in kind, replacement of existing soffits with tongue and groove beadboard, replacement of fascias with smart trim, installation of doors at the south, which is the front facade, installation of new storm windows, and replacement of an existing pergola. And I'll move these pictures for you.
Sam Gresham here to represent the owner. I guess the items are numerous enough that you have some order that you want me to approach this in terms of the staff report.
Does the commission have a preference in what we tackle first? Otherwise, we can start at the top of the list and work our way down.
Sure.
Or however you want.
Well, let me tell you briefly, the addition was built in 1980. It's a pretty horrible addition, and the owner was resistant to my recommendation. He tear it down and build something that was within guidelines. He feels like the footage is important and wanted to maintain that footage. His purpose here is to try to put this addition into a condition that matches the historic building. It differentiates itself in that it's a one-story addition, obviously, and is quite large. But his purpose is to do as much as he can to make it continue essentially compatible with the house. Windows, stucco, roof, detailing. So, begin. Where do we begin? Staff report, it says item 1, replace driveway. The driveway is essentially maintaining the same width of the existing drive. I think it was 10 feet. I'm not looking at the plan. But his paving is going to be increased in width in an area just maneuvering space behind the proposed. He's going to restore the garage, so the paving is being proposed as being increased in width to allow a garage door to be added to the existing garage, which is, as you can see, filled in there, and that paving will be brought back, I think, 30 feet or so from the front. But the remaining paving is just being replaced to the street. So it's just a driveway in the same width, other than that portion that's for maneuvering right outside the garage. So does that make sense? I think so. The paving is colored. We have a finish that years ago, when Heritage Hills did the sidewalk program, we had Conley Paving do a great deal of paving there. I know Suzanne's husband's an expert in this area, but the paving technique they used was to use aluminum oxide. It was black gravel. It was very tiny, and they spread it in the wet cement. They didn't color anything. Then they acid washed it, and the color of the sand really came through. So the light brown color, it gave it the look of worn concrete, and it was a almost perfect match. It was so ideally done that we proposed that in this case on this site. So that was, I think, a great solution. The brown paving that shows up in the neighborhood now is a little bit of a startling contrast to historic paving. So, driveways, item 1. Am I taking these in the correct order?
Well, I think I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners. In the staff report, there's a number of approvals recommended. Does anyone want to discuss any of those or feel like an approval is not warranted?
Dealer, that was for what? Which one?
Items 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, 14. What I'm getting at is if we agree that those do warrant approvals, then we could just get those out of the way and then go back to the items that staff did have concerns over.
Would you name those items again?
Yes. Item 2, 3, 4, Angela, if I'm getting these wrong, let me know. 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, and 14.
Okay. They don't match the...
Yeah, the order is different from that.
Well, we have this issue before.
Hold on.
Approve. Okay, so 9.
See item
8.
3.
So 9 is,
10. 2 and 4. 14.
Actually, item 3 I don't see, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't see item 3
I think I
either.
misspoke.
Yeah.
I think it actually got incorporated into something kind of swallowed.
Okay.
It's number 6.
Oh, there it is. It's a recommended continuance.
Number 6. There
Item
we go.
6.
So I think,
Okay.
Item 3.
3 and 6 to continue.
so the ones I see to approve would be 2, 4, 8, 9, 10, and 14.
Yes.
Correct. And you're reading the list that's in the staff report, is that right?
Well,
On the front page,
the staff report is listed, numbered differently, so it's hard to...
Right. Oh, okay. All right. All right.
So,
I'm sorry, read that again. 2, 4,
8, 9, 10, and 14.
and 14. Okay, okay. All right, we can discuss, well, sorry.
I don't know that we need to discuss those. That was my
Yeah, we
question.
don't need to discuss
Right.
those.
The only, I think I would have is items 2 and 4. Staff had recommended a condition
Yes.
that TPO will meet requirements to remain not visible other than properly installed and painted or coded flashing.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
We've had some
question.
issues with some people that installed TPO incorrectly in the
I
past.
watched those. You guys, you passed it. That's terrible. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys were forced to make a hard decision. But, that little plastic cap they use when they turn over the top without doing a coping on top and
Right.
covering it up?
Yeah.
That was a hard one for you. I'm sorry.
Well, it was already done.
It was already
I know,
done.
I know.
Yeah.
We had, yes, we had
Okay.
issues
And the
with that.
same, the conditions for the gutters, which were match existing and paint or coated to meet guidelines.
What item is that?
Copper.
Number 4?
Yeah, it is items 2 and 4,
There's only one condition listed.
yes. Yeah, the other is a finding.
Yeah. Okay, Sam, so you agree to the condition?
Yes.
Listed there? Okay. Then I would move approval of HPCA 17-00094, items 8, 9, 10, and 14 with the specific findings, and items 2 and 4 with the specific findings and the condition listed in the staff report.
I have a second.
Second.
Could you, second? I'm sorry.
Okay, have a motion from Neela Crank Clements, second from George Massey. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, those items, 2, 4, 8, 9, 10, and 14 are approved with their conditions as noted in staff report. All right.
Sam, could I ask you a question? On
Yes.
TPO roof, what is that material exactly? What is that?
And what does that stand for?
Is that like a bitumen bitumen?
No, it's a white material. It comes in a variety of colors, actually.
Comes in
It
black,
red,
red,
blue. You can get it in all sorts of colors, but it's a heat-welded membrane roof, I guess
Right.
like swimming pool liner. It's
Thermopolyolefin something or another.
What is it?
I don't know.
It's a
never
polymer?
bothered. I read it once and instantly forgot it.
It's a rolled sheet that's heat welded in together, right?
Thank you.
Well, shall we start with item 1 here? On the, it says replace existing roof with non-historic addition, and install tile roofing elective. Replace. But that's the TPO roof. Is that not correct? Yeah, we have a coping. It's a little edge around the structure. The garage facade has, well, you can see it there. You see in that picture that's on the screen. There's a coping. It's a single tile wide, a mission tile that forms an edge, a coping along the edge of the roof. There it is, right there. And that's proposed for the addition. As a means not of this 2-foot deep soffit. This addition, by the way, was done in 1980. Did I mention that? Yeah. It looks at the idea of taking that detail and extending it onto this existing addition is proposed here. So,
I think that's maybe, to me, it's part of the larger question of number 7, item 5, on replacing the siding and the comments that staff has in that.
okay, number 7 of
Number
the
7, item
comments.
5.
Oh, item 5, okay.
Which were, and the specific findings that we know the addition's not compatible, so I think my goal would be to find a look that we would approve if you were proposing that addition today.
You wouldn't pass that addition today.
We pass a lot of stuff on the back of houses. I don't know if we'd pass this one, but to get close there, and I guess my overall comment would be that the way I would read the guidelines, that it would encourage us to maybe have a link there that is compatible but not identical to the garage and to the house, so that we know it's an addition, but not to fool people into thinking that it was part of the historic property. So, and that kind of goes along with some of the other staff recommendations in that, again, don't want to fool people that it's historic, but, you know, it certainly needs to be addressed since it's there. But then, because, anyway, so then we go back to when you start removing very much, then where do you go? I mean, it's kind of a tough one. That's my idea, is that it should not necessarily be sheathed to match the house and the garage, but be something that is compatible and serves as a bridge. So I would not be maybe in favor of taking the coping off of the garage and matching that idea and doing it on the addition.
So a straight.
I would prefer a design that, like I say, is more of a link that kind of, I mean, that would be my idea. I don't know if everybody's for that, but that would be my idea.
I'm honestly disappointed that this addition is remaining. I think it's one of the least effective ones I've ever seen in any historic home, especially in Heritage Hills. The main home is very, very nice, and this addition is ineffective and not tasteful. I just think it's not good. If you wanted more square footage, I would have rather seen, and one of my clients wanted to do the master bedroom in the back. You know, you get more square footage there, you know. So I'm disappointed in keeping this.
Well, it's existing.
It's existing, I mean.
It's there.
Well, it does differentiate itself in that the long east wall has a 6-inch step in that wall. It steps back, and then, of course, it will step back again. There is that step.
I mean, there's a lot of, I think this type of architecture lends itself to maybe, you know, thinking of it as a, you know, a kind of a porch, a lot. I mean, there's things that in this style you could, I think, use, but not make it look historic. That's just my thought on this. It might even be easier on you to go that direction than try to make it look like a very ugly architectural addition that it was supposed to match.
Well, it's basically a box. I mean, it's
right.
in effect a blank slate to the extent that the facade can be changed or is being proposed to being changed. A parapet seems to make sense for this roof because we're talking about a flat roof, and we don't want an edge. We need an edge that looks appropriate. So the coping with tile seems to fit that requirement, make that thing, and as a matter of continuity, help a little bit. I think that sameness is somewhat of a virtue here, given the stucco, if stucco were added to the exterior. But are you suggesting an alternative siding?
I mean, that would be my thought would be to approach it in regards to the guidelines, to minimize it, because I don't think it can be beautified, personally. You've got a challenge here, Sam.
Well, if it were siding, I mean, a lap siding would be a dramatic difference and not be characteristic of, we'll call it the.
I mean, I think maybe the stucco could be used some, but I guess my overall, I've circled it on my notes, and I'm like, I mean, even the windows, I would go the opposite direction. I would go to a, square window with maybe out any of the mullions to make them more, sedate change. That's my...
Go ahead, say something.
I'm not saying... Everybody else
No,
has that
I mean,
thought, but
he'd be
that's-
delighted with 1/1.
That's mine. I have a real, I just feel like that this one in particular needs to be tastefully done as a link, not as a,
And you feel that the coping of tile is not something that you,
I think it needs to be as plain as possible and fit in instead of trying to decorate.
so we delete the
and match.
coping.
That's
straight
my
wall,
thought.
straight
Everybody
parapet.
The arches in the openings, the coping on the roof, they draw, and the stucco on the wall, they seem to draw more attention to it than make it kind of go away. So I don't know what the design answer is. You're the
Well,
professional.
simplicity is all your, I mean, I summarize it as simplicity in terms of what you're proposing. It has a flat roof. It will have a flat roof, and therefore a coping, parapet wall and some kind of coping. Because we're not going to do what that guy did.
I mean, and maybe the coping could be one, pick one thing, but I think the coping plus the stucco plus a fancier window is not, it's not the direction I think that it could go to maybe be a little more sedate and not be as noticeable. I don't know. That's my thoughts. And that, I think, kind of is connected to the whole rest of it.
So the stucco, which is in this case items for this list of case items on the cover page, is this item 5. You find item 5 to be something needing to continue? Yes? Are we talking-
I would think so. Okay, what part, so you can see the addition on that side. That's the side we're looking at.
On the
What do
east?
we see on the other side? Do you have a picture? There's one more where we kind of see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same, isn't it?
So, I
It's the
mean,
same.
to me, kind of the same thing there, whatever you do on that side, then bring it around
course.
and have it look
Right.
more like a something. I don't not like that. Is that thing going?
The pergola, there's a new one proposed, and you guys have approved it. That thing is going, so.
Okay.
There's a lot of work. This is $500,000 right now, and he hasn't finished the bid.
Right.
The
I mean,
owner's aware of
it's a big
cost.
project.
So,
So I think based on Mary Jo's comments, Sam, maybe item 1, to replace existing roof on non-historic addition, install tile roofing, that one. Item 5 and item 6, would those be continued?
new windows, because we're talking about a different window, Mary Jo?
5 and 6, yeah.
And this is on the front page is
Front
where I'm
page,
getting the
right.
numbers. Item 1, 5, and 6.
The next would be the garage door.
The garage door, we can split it with a divider bar, but it's 16 feet wide. There isn't a whole lot of room, given what he proposes or would like to see. It's basically an 18-foot space and the proposal to add 3 feet to the back, so it would be 18 by 20. It's currently 17 feet deep inside. It's a little bit small.
I would think it would be difficult to get 2 doors.
Well, we could put a divider in the door, have just a bar in the center to make it appear as 2. It's only 16 feet wide.
So the garage is rooms. It's not a garage now. I mean,
No, it will be restored as a garage.
It will be a
Yes,
garage.
Yes.
But will it be for 2 cars?
2 cars, 16 feet wide.
You can get 2 cars through that?
Not likely, but no, some of the addition is being removed in order to make that front wider, so that it's a 16-foot overhead door will fit.
And you're using the original exterior sidewalls.
Yes.
So that would be the garage door.
Sam, could you tell me about the existing tile roof, and it's been a while, a good 6 months since I was there to see it. Is it kind of multicolored tile?
Yeah, it's a Granada Flash, is the name of it, from Ludovici. I put the spec in there, and I gave the guy the salesman's number so that they could call him. We had that problem before, George, you recall. So, and just Ludovici tile. It needs to be the same tile. And Angela was very certain that we were, needed to make that happen.
So you'll be replacing some of them, not all of them?
Well, as Angela pointed out, when you take it off to re-roof underneath it to put the underlayment on, we're going to lose 15 to 20% of the tile. It may already be broken just by virtue of someone walking on that roof to paint the windows. But that is the replacement tile. It is using a tile from Ludovici, matching the existing.
Which is multiple colors?
It's multiple colors. There's blues, whites, different hues of red and brown.
Is there a kind of a standard blend of colors?
Yes.
Like so much percent of this color, so much percent of that color?
I'm uncertain because they call the blend Granada Flash. Okay. And it has all those colors in it. The same tile exists on the Paseo off of 30th. It's the same tile. I know. What's that? Granada Flash. And it has blue in it. It has white. It has a red and brown. It's a, well.
Sam, is there any other item that you would want to look at today?
The smart trim we would replace with just the yellow pine that was original to the fascia. I showed a detail and identified it as smart trim.
Okay, that's...
It's item...
And that's on the house?
It's on the house, the existing
We are
house.
not...
Replace fascia with smart trim.
We're currently not...
Item 11.
We're currently not, I don't think, we haven't been approving materials like that if the material used is readily available.
And we propose using the original material, pine.
Oh, okay.
Not smart trim. So
Oh, okay.
it was my mistake.
Okay, I'm sorry. So 11 could be approved.
11.
The living room doors?
Well, I thought I was asking Gumerson's group to help me with that. They went to Window Innovations. I had correspondence of what I needed, and obviously didn't get it. So I'll need to.
Oh, okay, so you haven't turned them.
I couldn't find it in the packet, and I know I asked for it, but it was something that was supposed to come straight to Angela. Didn't. So we'll have to add it. There's a window in place of the current door. There, right there. So cheap aluminum single glazed window, and in an opening clearly with a door that
Number
had been a
6.
door. Yeah.
So we need to continue that item? Is that what we're talking about?
Well,
in order to
I was
get
just
the-
asking if there's anything that you need to have approved before coming back.
We have to
There's
come
not,
back.
we'll just continue everything else. But if,
Okay.
unless there's, that's what I was just asking. If there was,
I
like if you needed to order a window or a door or something,
But I think.
like the
probably-
new doors on the south opening, I wouldn't, it says there's not documentation for that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
failed to get to her.
You want to just continue then the rest of it
I think we need to.
Okay.
Don't you agree?
till the August?
Is that the next hearing? Oh, well, that's right. This is July, isn't it?
Everything will be due by Tuesday.
Everything would be due by Tuesday, though.
That's fine. We'll
Okay.
hurry. Work the weekend,
I make-
overnight.
Okay. I make a motion to continue items 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, and 13 of HPCA 17-00094 to the August 2nd.
Second.
Right. Have a motion for continuance of the remaining items from Mary Jo Meacham, second from Neela Crank Clements. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. See you in August.
I'm sorry, repeat the numbers. 1, 3?
1, 3, 5, and 6, 7, 11.
Oh, it did 3. I'm sorry, 3 should have probably been something we could have agreed on, but that's all right. That'll be fine. Thank you.
12 and 13.
12 and 13.
Okay. No, it's no problem. All right.
If the commission is content that this is in fact replacement in kind, using the Granada flash as the roof, then staff does have the ability to administratively approve replacement in kind. We also have the ability to administratively approve installation of doors and an obvious door opening. But these are things that we need to get the documentation together for. So there are some of these items that may very well move forward before they get back to you.
Okay. That's fine. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Item 14.
HPCA-17-00096 at 309 Northwest 27th Street by David Conrad and Alexander Buriak. This is the installation of rain caps on chimneys at both the front and the back of the house, demolition of an existing garage that has been damaged in the storm, construction of a new replacement garage, replacement of a fence, and installation of storm doors. Storm doors and fencing can, in fact, be administratively approved. And there's our chimney at the front on the south. That's not you? I'm sorry. That's you. That's not you? Oh, yes.
Okay, 309 Northwest 27th Street. That is the brick house directly in front of us, right? Okay, very good. Staff had recommended approval of items that you see in your staff report. There were also some items that did not, a recommendation or with a condition on item 3, and then there were some items that staff recommendation did not make it into our report. Item number 2 for demolishing the garage, and items number 4 and 5 recommended for approval but did not make it in the staff report. Hi.
Hi there. I'm Alec Buriak on behalf of David Conrad.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Right. Where shall we start? Any initial questions on?
I just have a question about the garage. The existing garage is 608 square feet. The house is about 1660 square feet. That's a large garage for that size house. Guideline 4.4.5 says that a replacement garage shall approximate the original configuration. Are we assuming that this 608 square foot garage is the original configuration?
To the best of our knowledge, yes.
I don't see a Sanborn map in here. I may be missing it, sorry. It's just a strange size.
The original garage was very small. It was square.
Okay.
But this is of such age that I do not know when it was constructed.
So we're okay with going back with this strange sized garage? Do you think the guidelines, I mean, you've recommended approval, so.
Yes.
I agree. I agree with
It's
that.
enclosed space.
If it's the same.
Without the storm, I don't think that they would have voluntarily removed it.
Yeah.
The owner would love to keep the square footage as is.
Yeah.
Sure. Makes sense.
Based on the siding and construction, it would appear that if there was an extension to make this as long as it is, it's been there quite some time.
Yeah, I would agree in looking at the photos, especially in the storm damaged photos, that, it looks fairly consistent from, front to back.
Correct.
Even though there are kind of some trim pieces here and there, and that bit, obviously, but it's...
It appears there was some punched openings on the north that were infilled at some point.
That was just a question I had.
I believe the only condition noted was the floodlight selection.
Yes.
And we'd be happy to comply with a different selection as needed.
Sorry, what did you say about it?
I'm sorry, the only condition that I believe was noted was the selection of the floodlight for the front. And we would be happy to comply with a different selection.
Oh, the lighting.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 17-00096, item 1, and item 3, including the condition for item 3 and the specific findings as listed in the staff report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Neela Crank-Clements, second from Mary Jo Meacham for items 1 and 3. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have a garage that still needs to be demolished, but we're building one back in its place. So if we need some help with motions, we had a garage demolition. Actually, we have one in the next packet if you need a cheat sheet for a garage demolition motion hint. Or at the back of your commission's agenda, I believe, is an approval for demolition.
Okay, move to approve HPCA 17-00096. Item 2, to demolish the garage with the specific finding that the proposed work will have an adverse effect on the historic character of the district or property. It is necessary because of an imminent threat to public health and safety and complies with all relevant standards and guidelines and sections of Municipal Code 2010. I don't know if there are specific findings we need to add. Anyone?
In regards to the size?
Falling
No.
over?
In
No,
regard
this
to
is just a
demolition of the
demolition.
garage.
Oh, demolition.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
I think that's it. Clearly needs to come down.
Yes. Okay.
Second.
I have a motion from Neela Crank-Clements to approve item 2, demolition of the garage. Second from Heather Clemmer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So that leaves us items 4 and 5.
Which are both consistent with the criteria for administrative approval, so if you would prefer, staff can work with the applicant towards that within the next couple of days.
So do we need to continue those items so that you can do that?
No.
No, I prefer to.
Unless the commission has some issue with the items as presented, but I did not. So. All right. So we will leave those.
So we just don't address those at all? I thought usually we continue them so that they can get admin approval.
That's fine.
Yeah, just in case if something
Yeah.
court were to come up in between now and the next meeting.
That doesn't mean you have to wait and come back to a meeting. That just means that you now can work with staff to get those administratively approved.
I had a lot of fun today. I might come back.
We've had a lot of fun, too.
This was a lesson learned. This is my first one of these, so
Always a treat.
Sometimes it's more fun than today.
bring coffee and a snack next time.
So to August or
I would say
September?
let's go to September.
Just- Okay.
for
Move to continue HPCA 17-00096, items 4 and 5 to the September 6th meeting.
Second.
Have a motion for continuance, items 4 and 5 from Neela Crank Clements, second from Heather Klemmer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Right, item number 15.
HPCA-17-00097 for the property at 217 Northwest 33rd Street. This is the application of Mr. John Kane. Demolition of a garage, construction of a new garage, and replacement of the existing fence. And the garage is another that has had a recent storm damage in the storms in April.
Staff had recommended approval of items 1 through 3.
And good afternoon. I am John Kane, the owner of the property, and I'm here with my wife, Donna, and our construction builder, Chris Sanders.
Very good. Thank you for coming and hanging in there with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Last but not least, right?
Absolutely. All right. Any questions from the commission in diving into this one?
Well, I guess the thing that sticks out is that they're going to 506 square feet from 324. Do we know what 5% of the lot coverage is, Angela? I may have missed that. Okay. Which would give us wiggle room.
I have that on page 9 of what you sent, Angela. I'm sorry, I think I have that on page 9 of the staff report, if that helps.
5% of the lot is 464 square feet.
Yes.
So, can we build it at 464 square feet?
I'm sorry?
That would be easily approvable. 506, I think, is not quite, we kind of talked about this earlier with the garage that was over the allowable size.
I think it's, if you look at it, it's only 40 square feet over. Yeah, and it's like a couple of tenths of 1%.
Okay.
So-
And staff, Angela, is this something that staff has done, the research here on page 9 under considerations? In that the proposed 506 exceeds the size of the existing 324 and the recommended 450. And then did you all do this
Yes, I looked this information up.
up in this neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay.
For this block specifically.
For this block specifically?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This block space specifically.
Okay, that's what I thought. So.
And it has steadily increased to
Right.
some extent.
I would submit that, that the research that staff has done in regards to this, and in regards to our questions of going over 450, that this would make it an exception to go over this amount.
Well, my only question is, where is that allowable in the guidelines?
I think that's what we've been discussing. I thought that if we had small amounts or reasonable amounts for whatever reason, if we could justify those based on surveys, that we could justify increasing the size somewhat so that we wouldn't be just totally stuck with the 450.
Considering the guideline does talk about other considerations, including the sizes of the other garages on the block and the setbacks of the other garages on
Visibility
the
and so
blocks and the
forth.
visibility of the garage from the public right-of-way. So in my mind, this one kind of falls into all of those areas for other consideration that would allow that to be okay.
Angela, your research says the Sanborn maps show that the remaining historic garages are, some of them are in excess of 450 feet. So it's not garages that have been built recently, or, because, you know, we steadily kind of increase the sizes, it seems like, which maybe is not something we want to do.
And the research ended with the 1950s.
Okay.
Yeah, the last neighborhood earlier, there was a 2008 garage, but I called that out.
Okay. So Suzanne, guideline 4.4.6, the last sentence says that we may consider size and massing of surrounding structures. It doesn't really talk about whether they're new or whether they're historic, but maybe I think maybe that's what staff is considering this.
You can use that guideline for bigger or smaller.
Well, I guess I just don't see any reason for, letting this garage be bigger, but I'm having my say, that's all I'm having.
Did you all have a design?
Donna Kane, 217 Northwest 33rd, and our goal was, because the garage is square now, and to make it wide enough to be a two-car garage and keep it square to keep the same style, that's the square footage we ended up with.
Okay. Because it has a hip roof, and so to retain that
Right.
equal
Yes.
hip roof.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
keep the roof, yes.
And that would be installing 2 separate garage doors, is that right?
Correct.
It's good, solid logic. That's good, solid logic, I think.
I would make a motion to approve HPCA 17-00097, items 1 through 3 with the specific findings as noted by staff in the staff report.
A motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Mary Jo Meacham, second from George Massey to approve items 1 through 3. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Good. You got that, Paula? Very good. Thank you. All right, you are approved.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have no items under other business today. A long list of communications and reports from staff. We have one withdrawal at 417 Northwest 34th Street. No administrative closures, City Council, Board of Adjustment, or Planning Commission items. Anything from our ad hoc committee to identify potential landmarks today?
No updates that I know of.
Very good. Any items from municipal councilor? All right, very good. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission is August 2nd, 2017 at 2:00 p.m. in the Municipal Building, City Council Chamber. New applications for this meeting were received July the 3rd, 2017. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4:00 p.m. Tuesday, July the 11th, 2017. The next regularly scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, September 13th at 2017 from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. At 420 West Main, Suite 900. Are there any items from commissioners today? Thanks for hanging in there. Citizens to be heard. Wow. Okay. I hope you've had a great time today. Good. Thank you for hanging out with us. So, With nothing else, I will call us adjourned.